Sam Hartman and company back on the field for Wake Forest. He's trying to go up top. Going down the middle. Has a man. Pass is caught there. A.T. Perry breaks a tackle. Touchdown.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Keeper escapes, makes a cut. Daniels in space. Who scored?
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Trying for the end zone is May. Has a man. Did he catch it? What a catch in the corner by Paysour.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Play action. McCarthy. All day to throw. Finds a crosser. On time for the first down.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Plenty of time for Stroud. Directing receivers, flips it to the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! Marvin Harrison Jr.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Bowers after the play fake, showing his great athleticism. He's going to take it all the way for his third touchdown of the game.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we go, start another week, closing towards the end of August, although a little bit left in August even next week. Good afternoon, I'm David Smoak, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak, and this is 365 Sports. And a pretty loaded up lineup, including our first guest is TCU football coach Sonny Dykes. We look back at the legacy of the great Bill Little, longtime media relations director with Texas, with John Bianco, who's the current UT Media Relations Director, on the legacy of Bill Little. There's a lot to get to on Jim Harbaugh, USC AD, quarterback decisions in Houston, Illinois, and a few other notes to get to as well. We don't have anything. Isn't it kind of, I know it, I say it's refreshing, but it really has allowed us to go full throttle when it comes to the notes and the news, et cetera, speculation and even legitimacy when it comes to realignment. But right now it seems like that water is just like really smooth right now. Not much going on.
Well, once the ACC water calmed, at least for now, I mean, they can, whoever wants to leave the ACC can talk about it all they want, but still have to, see where that's going. And it wasn't going to be for next year anyway. So there's at least another time, in the ACC for at least FSU and somebody else, if they do want to leave. And nothing's really kind of going on Stanford and Cal right now, which is kind of surprising because you would think that they would want to make a decision a lot sooner rather than later, but they also may not have a decision to make yet. There may not be a final offer for them anywhere, and they've got to kind of see where all roads lead to for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the water's calm somewhat, but I think it's plenty choppy if you're Oregon State. I think it's plenty choppy if you're Washington State. I think it's plenty choppy if you're some of these American schools wondering what your conference is going to look like, especially if you're some of those that just moved into it this year, haven't even played it down yet like UTSA. I think it's still a period of uncertainty for the ACC schools just in terms of looking at their long-term futures. But the good news for them is that there is a long-term future still on paper that hasn't been cracked. So there's at least that security blanket there that there is a contract that you're under for quite some time. And sure, somebody can try and, negate that. But I think everybody's waiting to see somebody actually do that rather than just talk about it. So, yeah, I mean, I think things have certainly calmed down in comparison to where they were even a couple of weeks ago, certainly compared to a month ago or 2 months ago and really most of this last year. So it is kind of nice because we are now a week away, less than a week away from actual games. And I feel like we're in that period where I cannot wait to have some games to actually talk about. I am exhausted talking about, some of the other thing. I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff today, but I want to see games. I want to see some freaking games at this point. Like, we've talked about everything. Let's see who's who, what's what. is this guy the real deal? Is this coach the right guy? Is this team worth all the hype? I mean, that's the stuff that I'm just overjoyed that we're finally going to see that soon. But, yeah, on the realignment front, I mean, having spent so much time of it focused on the Big 12, they've made their intentions known that they're just sit back and, watching the landscape, but they're not, really on the hunt at this point. So, that's where a lot of the focus was. And now that that's sort of solved itself, it has certainly quieted down a bit. But, man, there's still the question of what happens with the Pac. What happens to them in the long run, and there's still no resolution there just yet.
All right, speaking of college football, here are the games. I sent this to Garrett. We can't do this every week, like we can in maybe the Big 12, but these are the games this coming weekend in college football. Speaking of Ireland, before we leave that up for a second, Garrett, Northeast Ohio, Boise State fan is in London, England, watching us as we speak, as we do the show. He's up there to go watch AEW at Wembley.
Oh, my God. Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, cheerio. And what a trip. Shout out, being able to attend a big all-in in Wembley Stadium. Very cool. That's random as heck that you're listening and watching and that I would have interest in that. But, man, good on you to be able to go to that. I'm very jealous of you.
My mom is on her way to.
Is there
to
a
AEW? She going to AEW too, Paul?
I don't think so, but
is she a closet wrestling fan?
Yeah.
Honestly, and we have some headlines to get to, especially with USC and Michigan, but has she been to about 30 different countries now?
Oh, more than that.
Really?
Yeah. I think the only ones legitimately she hasn't been to at this point, save for a couple, are ones you can't go to.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. Have fun, Mrs. Catalina, on the way to England here as we speak. All right, so USC. This is a story because it's USC. Let's go back to the games. Notre Dame and Navy open up the college football weekend. Garrett, thank you. That's in Dublin, Ireland. Remember last year, I think it was Northwestern beat Nebraska, Northwestern's only win. So there's that game. USC opens up at home against San Jose State. I even put the networks next to it. There's the game between Florida International, La Tech. Now, I bring that up because it's on the list, but La Tech, remember, that was a Baylor game. They were going to play Louisiana Tech last year and this year, and that's why they ended up with Albany last year and Long Island this year, because La Tech wanted to do something different with their schedule. So those are the games. The highlighted game, Navy at Notre Dame, and that's on NBC at 1:30 Central. Now, here is the story. USC, remember their AD was basically asked to leave. He was no longer welcome there, and they have named, or they will name this afternoon, Jennifer Cohen, the AD at Washington, as their next athletic director. I spoke with a couple of different people. Our buddy Ryan Abraham could not come on today about 4:30 because there's going to be a press conference about that time. She has been at Washington since 2016. She takes over a program headed to the Big Ten after leaving a program that eventually, of course, is headed to the Big Ten. And she's kind of one of the rising stars in the athletic business when it comes to college athletics.
I'll tell you what impressed me most about her at Washington is not that she's been able to hire good coaches in the aftermath, across the board, but she had a problem in the football department. She hired Jimmy Lake. It didn't work out. And guess what happened? She corrected it. She didn't sit there and try to fight the way through and see what's going to come out the other side. Jimmy Lake was not winning. He took a program from really good to really bad in a hurry, and then she went out and made a good hire, and she didn't do the thing where who's the biggest name that I can get to come to Washington?
Right.
Who's the best coach? And Kalen DeBoer is the guy on the rise. She brought in Kalen DeBoer. Year one, looks like that was a great hire. And, she doesn't have to make a football hire at USC as long as Lincoln Riley stays there, and doesn't appear that he's going anywhere anytime soon. And the only real threat to Lincoln Riley, I would think, in the long term is probably the NFL if he ever gets that itch. So, yeah, I think that's a good move for them. I think it stinks for Washington because they have one of the more up-and-coming people in the league. And USC, for the first time, appears to be kind of thinking outside the box when it comes to the athletic director thing a little bit, I think.
Yeah, in terms of not hiring an in-house person, they're still staying on the West Coast, though, still staying with somebody plenty familiar with the landscape and the way things have worked out there. But yeah, I think the most notable part for me is that it's not Mack Rhoades. I really didn't worry too much about who USC was going to hire unless it had a direct effect on what we cover per se, and the fact that we have a good relationship with Mack Rhoades to the point of talking to him every week. That obviously would have been interrupted had he gotten the USC job, and we wouldn't have been able to maintain that relationship the same way. So, he played a huge role in the Big 12 and where it's at now, a huge role in realignment, huge role in being by Brett Yormark's side a lot of the time. So I think that's as big of news for Big 12 and Baylor fans as it is for USC fans, honestly, maybe even bigger. I mean, with all due respect to her, that's a huge hire for them too, don't get me wrong, but that's equally impactful that it didn't go to somebody else named Mack Rhoades. So, glad that's over with, because that's been kind of going on for a while now.
Yep.
With not a whole lot of leakage, where to the point you just had people randomly throwing out candidates that made sense, but not really any sort of, hey, this is what's happening. So kudos to them for keeping it close to the vest. But yeah, glad to see some resolution there. And, I don't know how involved he got. We know he was involved to some extent. But, good to see that he's going to be sticking around here, it looks like, for a while. We're happy about that.
Yeah, he should join us tomorrow, and we will ask him a little bit more details. But one of the things about the USC job is USC, there's no doubt that they contacted him. We brought that up to him. About a month ago or so. It was right before he tried to go on vacation and realignment popped up again. But I have a feeling that one of the things that USC with Mack Rhoades is one of the highest paid directors of athletics in all of college sports. USC is not known for paying ADs. Now, I hope Jen Cohen gets a nice chunk in her contract. But one of the other things is not only does he make a lot of money, and he's earned that, then you're talking about cost of living extraordinarily high when it comes to California, L.A., compared to here in Central Texas. So there's that story involving USC has found their athletic director.
That would have just been a bad look, or it wouldn't have been a bad look, but I think it would have been kind of a rough look if, you have all this action with the Big 12, and then he's out the door, like the moment it's all changing, especially being such a big part of it. So, yeah, I think, obviously money was a factor to some extent. And congrats to Jen Cohen. That's a big hire. It's a big job and a big get for them. We'll see what Washington does now, because, one door closes and now another one opens. So
somebody mentioned Chris Peterson. Softy did. I talked about contact Chris Peterson, the former Washington and Boise State coach. And then if that doesn't work out, go after Barnes, who's the athletic director. We brought him up, remember, at the end of last week from Oregon State. So
yeah. Well, I mean, he and Pat Chun to me would be an interesting one. Of course,
he was rumored for the USC job.
Yeah, so yeah, he was rumored for the USC job. He was one of the more candid people when it came to talking about how the Pac-12 fell apart, which makes me wonder how he was feeling. I think the documentary, the book, really needs to be like, okay, here's how you were feeling behind the scenes, because we've gotten a little bit of that right now on the Pac-12, but what were your real feelings when you're watching this go on for over a year?
Yeah, what were you saying publicly, but what were you thinking?
When did you get nervous? Because that's the thing I'm most curious about, because there's a point where you stop buying the party line, and you go,
Yeah, you start wondering if you start texting other people or you're talking to other guys going, hey, or women, and you're like, hey, this doesn't seem to be working out. Jim Harbaugh, remember the story the NCAA was looking at handing Michigan a 4-game suspension for their head coach today. This from Josh Henschke. I spoke with him by text a little bit today, that Jim Harbaugh informed those inside Schembechler Hall that the self-imposed 3-game suspension is effective immediately. Now, somebody followed up with that, asking about, can he coach during the week? And yes, he can. He just cannot be at Michigan or with Michigan on game day. So there's a 3-game self-imposed penalty. Whether that helps alleviate anything future with the NCAA remains to be seen, but at least there's that story there. That's from the guy who covers Michigan, Henschke, for Michigan Rivals.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work out for Michigan. Of course, I'm the one who's famously not afraid of NCAA suspensions, and maybe it'll change that. They didn't agree to what was a 4-game suspension. So here's what I'm wondering. Is that just for spite, where you thought you'd agree to a 4-game suspension, The Committee on Infractions didn't agree to the terms of that. So then you said, we'll just do our own, but we're only going to do 3. So that shows you Committee on Infractions.
Yeah.
I don't think it shows them anything, because if you're really that big and bad, you wouldn't even impose 3.
Yeah.
Why are you imposing 3 if you're not worried about it? I think there is clearly a concern, and as much as we want to, push the NCAA to the side in our minds and say they can't do anything, clearly they have some sway still. And yes, they can still do some things. Now, you can try and fight it, but, I think we've still seen people choosing and picking their battles, right? I mean, not everybody's just like, we're going to Penn State this thing and tell you, screw yourself, and we're going to fight it. Like, Penn State was the last time that's happened, too, to the best of my knowledge. Maybe there's been a case in between that.
North Carolina.
Okay, North Carolina. So there's been, another example, but, I think there's also been plenty where people just go along with it. So, I mean, I think, the facts probably led you a certain way if you're Michigan of like, okay, does he have a point? Did he really forget all this guy who remembers every little thing about every little thing? Did he just forget the lead up to the NCAA violations? That's miraculous. Is there proof showing that he really just had nothing to do with anything? No, there's not. Clearly, there's something to this, and that's why I think you try to, take some sting out of it by self-imposing. Just like, we've seen programs, well, we won't go to a bowl game this year. Right. We'll self-impose that. It's that idea of, you're probably going to get busted for something, so you try to make it a little less severe. And so this would be one less game, which I guess would be a win in the long run if that's all it ended up as. But interesting to see kind of the backpedal, at least on the Harbaugh side of things, because it certainly felt like he was going to try to, I'm going to, you're going to have to force me or whatever. It just felt like there was going to be a little bit of a pushback, and now it's a turnabout. So interesting to see that, and leads me to believe that there was definitely something in the NCAA's corner that could have made this a process that dragged on or turned out badly for Michigan in some way.
I thought when I first read that Michigan decided to make this decision, and without just the way I saw that initially, I was like, well, wait a minute. They had to have told Harbaugh. It was like and you wondered if this was any kind of friction between the university administration and Harbaugh, which it doesn't appear as if there is. But if there was, then he always can bolt. He can go anywhere.
I do think there is a bit of friction, and we talked about it between Ward Manuel, the AD, and Harbaugh, in that I think that, Harbaugh clearly, cuts his own path, and Ward Manuel doesn't have as much probably control over Harbaugh as he does over maybe even say Juwan Howard. But they've had a lot of problems at Michigan with stuff like this over the last couple of years. So it begs the question, how do they line it up, or is anything punishment-wise coming to them that are going to make them line it up, or is this their attempt to make that, to make this one go away so they can keep doing things the way they want to do them?
You're right, but they have had some issues that they've had to deal with in the athletic department and the university. Not a surprise here, but Dana Holgorsen made it official over the weekend. This from Joseph Duarte, that Donovan Smith, the transfer from Texas Tech, the clear-cut starter at quarterback for the Cougars as they enter this season here in a couple of weeks.
Well, we had him on a Big 12 Media Days. He didn't even talk like that. He didn't even try to drop cliches like, well, everybody's in a competition and that. I mean, he was very complimentary of Donovan Smith, and even said, if he doesn't throw those interceptions against us or whatever it was.
Yep, he did.
He mentioned that. So which
is one of Donovan Smith's concerns, or he does throw the ball to the wrong people quite a bit, and that got him in trouble at Texas Tech.
Yeah. So this, not a surprise at all. He brought it up to us in a fashion that made me even stop thinking about who the other quarterbacks were that were going for it.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't get him for a reason. You didn't get him to sit on your bench after starting games at Texas Tech last year. I mean, granted, that was because of injuries, but still, he started and played a lot for the Red Raiders. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think you move to Houston unless you plan on playing a lot more. And so this is not a surprise whatsoever. And we'll see. Big shoes left by Clayton Tune, who, basically started for, a lifetime it felt like, but his whole career practically, and put up big numbers and won them some games, and had some tough losses too and some bumps in the road along the way, but he kind of ran the gamut of just being the man there for a long time. So it'll be interesting to see a change back there, and we'll see what Donovan Smith can do. He's obviously physically talented. The turnover problem though was the thing that really stood out about him last year, just inopportune times or just crucial mistakes in that regard. So if he can clean some of that up, then they got a heck of a potential playmaker on their hands. But he's got to clean that up, or else they're going to have some losses that you'd rather not have or rather shouldn't have, like Texas Tech did last year. So no surprise, and we'll see what he does.
Also, this is a name, I bring this up. Of course, there's going to be there's be dozens of quarterback decisions. A lot of them are already ironed out. But this name brought back a memory. Ole Miss transfer Luke Altmaier has been named the starting quarterback at Illinois. He, of course, played in the Sugar Bowl when Baylor and Dave Aranda went 12-2 down in New Orleans. When they beat Ole Miss, he is now the starting quarterback with the Illini.
Yeah, Ole Miss, just decided to revamp not the entire, because they had Jackson Dart, but really in the couple years since Matt Corral left, that's what it's been, is revamping the quarterback roster with Jackson Dart, now Spencer Sanders, Walker Howard. They've got a really high, like a 4-star recruit there that's also in the quarterback room. So when Luke Altmaier left, it wasn't a surprise, and it's not a surprise to me that he won the job, vacated by Tommy DeVito there at Illinois. The only thing we really saw him in was either mop-up duty or after Matt Corral got hurt. So preparing for a full offseason as the starter doesn't surprise me that he's got the talent to take that over. Illinois is one of those teams that I'm curious to see if the secret's out on them after last year with Brett Bielema, or if they can continue their style of play and be consistent in the Big Ten. Because when Illinois is good, you kind of like, Illinois was good that year. They don't have a bunch of history of this is a good era in Illinois football.
Yeah, we'll see what he does. Bielema seems to have some positive momentum going there, but, this isn't some big, sexy name that's taken over. We wouldn't have any idea if he wouldn't have played in that Sugar Bowl, and he wouldn't have played if it wouldn't have been for an injury early in that game to Matt Corral. So, yeah, we know a little bit about him just solely because of that, and, people who probably follow the SEC or Ole Miss, have heard of him, but haven't seen him, in this type of a role where it's his and, start the season and go for it. There's some positive expectations there. We'll see what he can do with it, but that'll be one to watch, and just another domino falling in this whole quarterback landscape.
I thought this was an interesting story. We'll get to it a little bit later, Garrett, on the Memphis, a promotion of how they're getting fans to buy tickets, and if they win, then the fans get like free tickets or huge discounts on tickets. We'll have that a little bit later on. At 4 o'clock today, John Bianco, who is the athletic director, senior athletic director for communications at the University of Texas. He's been in that role a couple of different times at UT. Bill Little, longtime director of media relations, passed away over the weekend. And this is a gentleman. He was amazing. He is an encyclopedia, was an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to Texas. I think he wrote books. Anybody at Texas remembers Bill Little. I remember him. He was a guy that I reached out to a bunch for interviews with various UT athletes along the way. Here's a quote. I sent a note to Mac Brown in saying that we lost perhaps one of the nicest people I've ever known in Bill Little. Mac Brown's response to me on Sunday, we lost a great man, a friend, and a professional. He will be missed. I hope you're doing well. That's from North Carolina, former Texas head coach Mac Brown, on the passing of Bill Little. John Bianco will join us today at 4 o'clock to kind of go over the legacy of what Bill Little set along the way.
Only met him about 3 or 4 times, but he was really something in that, the University of Texas, and people outside the industry may not know this, but they kind of revolutionized the athletic director position, because it used to be the old coach, was it? And then it was DeLoss Dodds, who was not the old coach. And then they, Bill Little revolutionized that sports information director, whatever his job title really could have been. He was so much more than all of that. And he's the one who, when Texas hired Augie Garrido, DeLoss Dodds came and said, well, I need to hire the best baseball coach in the country. And he said, who is that? He said, well, I don't know if you'll get him, because he seems to like living in California. He goes, tell me who it is. He goes, it's Augie Garrido at Fullerton. You got to go get him. And so without Bill Little, some of these great hires probably don't happen, because there's not this walking library. Like, encyclopedia is not even fair. He was a walking library of information.
Yeah, he was. Great man. a heck of a man. And so we'll reflect back on his legacy at Texas today a little bit after 4 o'clock. One note about UT, and it's not a good one. DeMarvion Overshown was injured in the preseason game the Cowboys played against Seattle. And the news they were worried about, I remember the play. I knew he got up. It was, grabbing his leg. He is out for the rest of the year with a torn ACL. John Stevens, former TCU tight end, and then went to the University of Louisiana, also out for the year. But Overshown was a guy that it really had not just hype, but really was playing well. And apparently also very good at digesting Dan Quinn's defense when the second wave of players were in the game. He was kind of the quarterback on the defense. He is now out for the year, a dynamic talent from ARP, Texas, and now he will have to sit out his rookie year in the NFL.
Yeah, he was going to play. He was going to play this year for the Cowboys. There was no doubt about that. He was on his way to not starting, but he was going to play a lot, and now that's over, and that's a position they're definitely going to have to address.
Brutal news for him, brutal news for the Cowboys. They had super high expectations for what he could do for them pretty much, right away. And so you'd heard a lot of good things and figured they got themselves a pretty nice player in this draft. Deuce Vaughn as well. I mean, it turns out that, some good Big 12 impact was likely to come from this class. And, Deuce still has that opportunity, but Overshown, we'll have to wait now. That's just sucks to get all the way to this point and then have something take you out like that. But that's the nature of the game. And, good luck to him in his rehab. I know it'll be long and tiresome and certainly very frustrating initially, but he'll hopefully get healthy and be back out there and get to do his thing sooner rather than later.
When we come back, they played for the national championship. One of the great stories last year in college football, TCU. We will have their head coach, Sonny Dykes. He will join us next on 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. Full-service butcher shop, full-service bakery, fresh baked bread and kolaches every single day, plus other sweets and treats, too. Their butcher shop has pork, poultry, seafood, and also beef. And up and down the aisles, it's got that almost hometown grocery store flavor with what you need from, it could be pasta, could be cans of canned beans or whatever you want. And it's also a great place for your tailgating needs, from charcoal to pellet fuel, plus the product you want to put on your grill or also your smoker. Waco Custom Marketplace, the Bauer family, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
During the Make This the Summer event, save big on a 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited with $3,500 plus 2.9% for 72 months. Or a 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport with employee pricing for all plus 1.9% for 72 months. And an extra $1,000 rebate. Or if that's not enough, get a 2023 Jeep Compass 10% off MSRP. That's right, and no payments for 90 days on all offers. Find the Jeep that fits you at Allen Samuels in Waco.
The future's bright, the time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
As we will get Sonny Dykes here in a moment, a couple of rules changes in college football. The Blitz is an email that I get every Monday morning right before the season and throughout the season. A couple of notes in case you don't remember. When an offense gains a first down, the clock will no longer be stopped to award a first down except with less than 2 minutes left in the first or the second half. This change is effective immediately. It's Division I and Division II. We've discussed this. Division III said no to this. So there will be where the clock keeps running and so you don't like jump up, and I'll probably do it myself. That is one of the changes in college football as they try to maybe shorten the game just a few minutes. The other one is instant replay. The optional use of instant replay does not have to have an instant replay booth official is now permissible. He can now look at it without any kind of a challenge or anything like that. They're trying to speed up that process because that, as you know, Craig, really at times just lingered. You would have a play, it would be over, they'd probably show it 3 times on TV, and then about the time the team was about to take a snap, the official would blow the whistle and run to the sideline, and it just seemed like a waste, a little bit longer than it should have been for that process.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some things that could speed up, and that's an area. I would argue, though, and as many have pointed out, they're not shortening the commercial breaks. So, you can keep shortening the games, but you're not shortening the commercial breaks. So that's the part that people have an issue with as much as anything. I'll watch a Big 12 official stay out there, a couple minutes longer than it seems necessary rather than watch another Taco Bell commercial. So we'll see how much of a difference it makes, and maybe our next guest can let us know how it affects him in any great way or not.
Well, our next guest is Sonny Dykes, the head coach at TCU. A great story last year, played for the national title. And, Coach, we want to discuss your Frogs, and we will. But the rule about when a first down occurs, the clock will not stop unless it's at the end of the last 2 minutes of the first half and the second half. You play fast. You want to get as many plays in as possible. Is that something that you're okay with, that new rule? Is that something you suggested as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really know how much that's going to affect the game. I mean, I think pretty substantially. One of the things that made college football different maybe than the NFL was your ability, if you were down 3 scores in the fourth quarter, your ability to be able to come back and win a game, because the clock did stop on a first down, and it gave you a chance if you wanted to play at a really fast tempo to really try to extend the game, get more plays. And and like I said, create an opportunity to make a comeback. And now I don't know that that's going to happen as much. I mean, that clock's going to be running much more than it has been in the past. And so, I think it's going to reduce the number of plays. I think I heard you guys allude to this earlier. I don't know that the issue with and the length of the games has that much to do with the number of plays as much as it does to do with commercial breaks and reviews, instant replay reviews, and all that type of stuff. So, to me, I was a little surprised this was something that got brought up and then all of a sudden became a rule. I was a little surprised that there wasn't more conversation about it in college football. But I can tell you this, I mean, commercial breaks aren't going to go away. They're certainly not going to reduce the number of commercial breaks that we have, and they're certainly not going to reduce the time that they have for advertising. So, I think this is one of the things that has to change.
Well, Coach, you kind of already made a preemptive strike, right, when you hired Kendall Briles, who we covered here for a long time. I've watched most of the games that Kendall's ever played for. I don't think he knows that the play clock is as long as it is anyway. So wouldn't that kind of be a benefit to you guys that he's there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do think that if you went back and you looked at us last season when Garrett Riley was our offensive coordinator, the faster we went, it seemed like the better that we ran our offense. And so is when Garrett moved on to Clemson and that job came open, one of the things that I wanted to try to do was play a little bit faster. I think our players are comfortable playing fast. Chandler Morris, our starting quarterback, was raised in a fast-paced offense, going running Randy Allen's offense at Highland Park High School. And so he's accustomed to that. I felt like our players were accustomed to that. We practiced that way. And so that was one of the criteria that I wanted to look at when we sat down and said, okay, who makes sense to hire in that spot? And I've been really happy with Kendall. I think he's going to do an outstanding job for us. I think his offense and the style really fits our personnel. And I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Coach, just how do you feel about where you guys are at this point? Obviously, the last week before a game week, all this build up to get to this point now, just a lot of change, though. We're losing a lot of veteran players, has been well documented. Just what's kind of been the story of the offseason or the fall camp for the TCU Horned Frogs, in your opinion?
Well, it's been good. It's been good for us. As you said, we did lose a pretty good number of players last year. Obviously started with our quarterback, and, we lost a couple of really good receivers with Quentin Johnston and Darius Davis and Tay Barber. But, we've been able to add some really good players to that equation as well. And so we're excited about our wide receiver room. We feel like we've got a lot of depth. We feel like that's probably one of the strengths of our team is our depth at wide receiver. We added transfers from Alabama, Ole Miss, Arkansas, LSU, Minnesota, all a bunch of guys that are really talented players that I think, have come in, and these guys have been everything that we thought they were going to be up to this point. And so, we already felt like we had some good receivers returning, and all those guys have done is add to our depth and create a lot of competition for receiving spots. And so, we feel good about that group. We needed to add a couple of defensive linemen to try to replace Dylan Horton and some other guys that were pretty productive for us. And we found a couple of guys that we think can help us. And then we signed a really good freshman class. And a couple of those freshmen are good enough to where they're going to be able to get on the field and help us as well. So, we feel like we were much deeper on our defensive front than we were last year. And specifically at cornerback as well. We've got 7-8 cornerbacks that we feel like, can all contribute in different ways this year. And last year we were about 3 deep in that room. So, we're excited about the depth, trying to replace a couple of starters up front, went out and found a couple of transfers that have come in and provided depth as well. And then some of those young players have developed like we hoped. So, we're a deeper football team, and now we have to see if those guys can raise their play and try to play at the standard that, Quentin Johnston played at last year, and Kendre Miller and some really good productive players for us.
I know you don't have to think about it this way because it's reality, but can you imagine what it would be like to have to do what you're trying to do, but without the benefits of the transfer portal as everybody has gotten so used to nowadays?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's no secret that we would not have been, in the college football playoff last season had it not been for those transfers that we were able to bring in. And some of those guys weren't some of the big names in our program, but they provided a ton of depth, a ton of leadership, made a lot of plays, and gave us an opportunity to win some football games that we probably wouldn't have been able to win before. So, we feel like we had a stronger transfer year this year than we did last year. We felt like we brought in the right kind of guys. I mean, they're all good teammates. They all like each other. They've really blended well into our culture. And so it's been a real strong addition. Some of those guys have turned into some of the best leaders in our program, and, they've come from a lot of successful programs. And so they know how to win, and they know what it takes to win at a high level. And, we're excited about them.
Sonny, the Chad, of course, Morris's son, Chandler, he was your starter last year. We know the story. Eventually, Max Duggan had an incredible run, and so did you. Is he where he was last year when he won the job?
Yeah, I think he's significantly better. He's just been in the offense longer. I think he's a year more adjusted. I think having the opportunity to watch Max have the kind of season that he had last year and learn from that ride that Max went on, from basically backup quarterback to Heisman Trophy runner-up. And so, there's a lot of things that went into that. And Chandler had an opportunity to sit back and watch it all and learn. And so I think he's a much better player as a result of that. I think the change in offense really suits his skill set. Our quarterback will be out of the pocket a little bit more, throwing on the run, and Chandler's really strong doing that. A lot of quick passing game. Chandler's very, very accurate. It gets the ball out very quickly. And so I think that transition has also really it's going to really fit his strengths and what he can do as a quarterback. So excited to see him, go out and play and perform. He's really played well up to this point. And so, this week's going to be an important week for us as we start kind of getting into Colorado prep and get a game plan and decide, okay, these are the things that we're going to do, and here's how we're going to try to attack Colorado. So it's going to be a big, 10 or 12 days for our program as we start to get ready, and I think everybody's excited about it.
Is there something to him being a coach's son that maybe he was able to deal with it in modern college football better, of being the starter, losing the job to a guy with just the incredibly hot hand that is not necessarily the norm anymore in college football?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I think he's been around the game his whole life. I think he understands, sometimes things don't go as planned, and certainly, he had won the job, and we felt like that he was going to, have an excellent year for us last year. And, and he gets injured in the Colorado game, and then, and then Max comes in and does what he did. And so it was a good lesson for Chandler. And I think, as you said, his dad's obviously been a very successful football coach. His dad could give him some great advice on, how to handle it and how to learn from it. And as I said earlier, I think he's a lot better quarterback having gone through it.
Sonny, how do you prepare for Colorado? Brand new staff, so many changes, massive amount of transfers. How do you go about your business, or you just make sure you focus on you?
Well, there's a little bit of that. I mean, I think particularly in the first game, you always have to do a good job of not beating yourself. You've got to not have any catastrophic plays. Don't have a punt block. Don't give up a kickoff return for a touchdown. Something like that could really, change the game. You have to make sure that doesn't happen. You've got to do a great job taking care of the football. You've got to limit pre-snap penalties, whether it's false starts, whether it's substitution errors, alignment errors, all those type of things. You have to be really sound with those going into game one. And so that's really got to be your focus. But as you said, I mean, we don't really know exactly what we're going to see from Colorado. Obviously, we've studied, what they've done in the past, what Dion did at Jackson State, what his coordinators have done at previous stops. But you just don't know how the players that they have and how they're going to fit into those schemes. And are they going to be in 11 personnel as much as they were in the past? And, what's their personnel groupings going to be? Because that's going to determine a lot of their run game and just all these questions that we're not really sure of right now. And so, it does really put the onus on just focusing on ourselves, making sure we can make adjustments as the game goes on, because we're going to have to do some adjusting.
Coach, we covered Jared Wiley in high school, got to talk to him at Big 12 Media Days. He always had the big frame, but looks like he's just looks like he's in immense shape, seemed really excited for the upcoming season. How big was it to have somebody with his experience back for your team and your offense? And just what are you expecting out of Jared as far as taking the next step this season?
Yeah, Jared's a big weapon for us. I mean, he's physical enough to be an inline blocker and does a great job in our run game. He's also athletic enough to split out and you can isolate him and get into some sets where he's the only receiver to a side. He can play outside, he can play inside. He's 6'7", so he's a big target. He catches the ball well, runs well for somebody his size, and so he's a guy that's going to be a big feature for us, in our offense. And just because he can wear so many different hats and do so many different things, he can line up in the backfield and he can be a matchup problem. And so he's had an excellent camp. He really has. He's a much more consistent player right now than he was a year ago. And I think, again, he fits into our scheme really well, and his skill set does. So I expect Jared to have a big year and look forward to watching him play.
Coach, are the new, especially in this situation with Deion Sanders, where, you don't know, the roster is completely new from a team you played just a year ago to, you can watch film from Jackson State, but the coordinator is even different than the one he had there. Is this maybe as far out as you have to go to figure out tendencies as maybe you ever have before?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's always tough when you have a new coach. But it's even tougher when you have a new coach that has 70 new players. And so, there's no reason to even watch the film from Colorado last year. We're not even wasting our time watching that. There's just not going to be that many guys that played in the game for Colorado. They're going to play in this year's game. So it's a little bit odd. It's a little strange. Obviously you got to go back and watch his son, Shedeur, and see how he played at Jackson State and see what his strengths are. And, they've got a lot of really explosive wide receivers. They've got a running back coming over from Houston that's a good player as well. And, they've added some really good speed. I mean, there's a receiver that's come over from South Florida that's one of the elite kick returners in the country. And they've obviously got a good two-way player that played for them at Jackson State. And so they're going to have a lot of options. They're going to have really, really good skill. And so we're going to need to make sure that we're ready to play. I think that the strength of our football team is going to be up front, with our defense and offensive lines. And so that's going to need to be a big strength for us as we go get into this game against Colorado.
Coach, did you see any signs of entitlement, or did Kaz Kazadi end that the first day of off season?
Yeah, you know what? This group has been good. I love this group because they've never really talked about last year. I think they understand that this is a different team. A different set of leaders, a different set of guys that are going to have to step up and become, big time players for us. And there's really no carryover. I mean, what you want to have is a successful program and a program that has a lot of history and a lot of tradition and knows how to win. And, you're not going to establish that in 2 years. And so, we're going to have to go out and earn everything we get. No one's going to be scared to play TCU. We're going to have to do what we did last year, and that's play well in every single game. I thought we played really well for 14 weeks last year and didn't play well in the national championship game. And it's going to take that same kind of consistent performance this year to have a chance to have a good football team. And we'll see if this team can do what they did last year. I mean, last year's group showed up every week, rolled their sleeves up, went to work, prepared incredibly well, and went out and played well. And that'll be a big challenge to see if we can do that.
I know that, and thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it. The TCU-SMU series eventually looks like it's going to go separate ways. As someone who's a college football coach, and you understand business, and that's probably what's happening here, but the rivalries, are we starting to maybe have some of those disappear because of money?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that, I think everybody's trying to do the same thing and figure out how to get to the college football playoff. I mean, that's, if you sit down and you ask the people that are the movers and shakers in college football, they're the conference commissioners, they're the athletic directors, and everybody's vying to get as many teams as they can into the playoff. And that just generates so much money for the conference and so much money for the institutions. So, I think everybody's trying to figure out how to put themselves in the best situation to get in the playoff. We were playing 2 non-conference road games a lot of years. There aren't many big-time college football programs in the country doing that. Those teams that have been in consistent playoff teams and have played at a high level and won at a high level, play 2 non-conference home games every single year, and sometimes 3. Most of them play 3. And so, when that happens, it changes your scheduling philosophy, and we're trying to do the very best job that we can to give ourselves a chance to go compete at the highest level. And so when that happens, I think sometimes rivalries disappear a little bit. It seems to be kind of the standard around college football today.
In line with that, as somebody who was at one point in time the head coach at Cal and playing in the Pac-12, you're now in the Big 12, and all that's taken place over the last few weeks. Your thoughts on what is obviously a great deal for the Big 12, that they've strengthened their ranks. They're bringing in some new schools, not only this year but next year now as well. And obviously a little bit more trouble for at least the time being, some schools potentially in the West. Just Coach, how do you see all of that from your standpoint? I'd imagine it's a bit of mixed feelings, but could you explain your side of things?
Yeah, it's a little bit kind of like we talked about earlier. I mean, it's complicated. I mean, I'm in the Big 12, coaching in the Big 12, so I think it's really important for us to have stability for our league. I think in today's world, expanding is important, and I think it's a sign of strength, particularly when 2 of your member institutions are leaving, with Texas and Oklahoma moving on. And so I think it was really important for us to go out and expand it, but at the same time, if you do that, then the demise of the Pac-12 happens. And, you had 4 institutions that moved on to the Big 10, and you had 4 that are coming to the Big 12. And you hate to see that happen, but at the same time, it seems to me that that's in some ways, I guess, progress. The Pac-12 was a great league. There's a ton of history in that league. It was something, when I coached there, it was something I thought would go on forever. But the leadership in that league wasn't very strong. And I think that we're fortunate in the Big 12 to have, Brett Yormark as our conference commissioner. I think he's very innovative. I think he's very bold. I think he's very creative. He certainly, in my opinion, has put the Big 12 in a position of strength. And so he's done a fantastic job of doing that, but you hate to see it at the demise of a league like the Pac-12 that has so much history.
Sonny, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Appreciate your time, and good luck the rest of the lead up to your opening game with Colorado into the future. We appreciate it all. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate you guys as always.
As always, you too. Sonny Dykes, head football coach at TCU. Man, they do have a lot of new names again, but a lot of faces. The transfer portal allows you, if you need depth, to add depth. If you need players, you go find starters.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I asked him about that. It's just, it doesn't matter because he doesn't have to imagine what it would be like to have no transfer portal. I mean, he lived it, and it's not a thing anymore, so you do have it. But, I mean, what would they look like? I mean, you brought in a handful of receivers alone, just receivers. You brought in a handful of guys, much less, the D-line, as he mentioned, much less, all the other spots that you try and, you fill in the holes there. So, it's fascinating how much that has changed the game for coaches and programs, and certainly they've benefited from it and are looking to benefit from it again greatly. But, just a lot of stuff to unpack there, and as much as anything, very interesting to hear him talk about the Pac and talk about a lot of different things. But, man, it just makes me want to see a football game too, right? We've been so deep in talking season. It's great to hear him, but it's now I want to see Colorado. I want to see Dion. We've heard all about Dion. Let's see it. We've heard all about TCU, and they're not going to be as good. Let's see it, and thankfully we're just days away from that. But they're a really curious case because they have a bunch of good players coming back. They lost a bunch of really good players. They got the portal and grabbed a bunch of really good on-paper players. And their first part of their schedule, I mean, SMU's probably their toughest game in the first 6 weeks. Unless West Virginia's a bit better than expected. But that first 6 weeks, I mean, the Iron Skillet's probably their most formidable game, but they should very well be 6-0 before they head in. And because, Iowa State at one point, maybe that's a tough – well, I mean, look at what's happened with them in the last month of just, losing Jarrell Brock, losing Hunter Deckers. So that one doesn't look as formidable. I think there's a really good chance they start off and hit the midway point perfect again. And that would obviously be a huge story, but – It's there, and they're going to be super talented once again.
You know what? I think this is maybe going to be one of the few times in the history of college football that You've got a team that was coming off a run to the title game, coming back, and they were, outside of Georgia, to me, I mean, you're talking about one of the stories of college football from a year ago, and they're going to be less talked about than the team they are playing that is 1-11 in the first game.
Oh, yeah.
They're less interesting than that. And it's just, I mean, that's how things can change really fast. But I do think that a Sonny Dykes coach team will appreciate laying in the weeds a little bit in a game that they'll be probably an overwhelming favorite in.
I would say they're probably, I don't know, I'm not a good 14 to 20 point favorite in that game. I don't set odds, and I surely don't know sometimes when they do, but I think there'll be a couple of touchdown favorite because maybe the unknown keeps that a little bit less than that. But thanks to Sonny Dykes, thanks to Mark Cohen for setting that up with us here on 365 Sports.
Yeah, good to hear from Coach and just get his thoughts about a lot of different things. I mean, just hear him kind of peel back the layers on Chandler Morris and just kind of what's going on with him right now. But, yeah, I mean, they're going to be a fascinating team to watch. I do think that they should start off pretty strong. That Colorado game will be interesting just to see how that looks, how Colorado looks, how TCU looks. And, I just can't wait. But they're going to be really good, I expect, even with all of the talent drop-off. He's a great coach. Seems like a perfect fit for up in Fort Worth. And that was a magical run. Hard to see how they could duplicate that because just so many things had to go their way up until the very end. But they're going to be feisty and will certainly be right there in the mix at the top of the standings, I would imagine, from start to finish.
All right, when we come back, John Bianco from the University of Texas, the senior associate athletic director for media relations, on the passing of Bill Little and the names that he saw along the way and also those who he touched. This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace. I spoke with, by text, I say that, it seems like that's the same thing, with Dr. Rob Maxey earlier today with a text to him. I'm going to go see a back specialist on Wednesday morning. And they said when I had the appointment set up this morning, they need the MRIs that they have been done on my lower back. And so I contacted Ideal MRI. The doctor's office wanted a disc. They can put the images in a portal, and so they'll send those to Dr. Ackley's office too. So I'm trying to get maybe a nerve or two or something that just hasn't been quite right now for the last several months and get that looked at. That's how easy it is. You go to Ideal MRI to find out what is hurting you, ligament, muscle, something else, and you might get an MRI and it shows nothing. Well, at least you can eliminate that from the process of what is wrong with you. Ideal MRI, $497 is all it will cost every single time. Not higher the second time or twice as much. It's $497 or less, and the average MRI can cost you around $1,100. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace, finding out what hurts you so you can start to live the life you want. IdealMRI.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. And if you can't make it to Riverbend, DoorDash is available to bring it to you. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old, and they come every 6 months, and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here They're used to lights. They're used to water in their mouth. They're used to experience. They already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
.365 Sports a little bit later in this hour. Former Baylor quarterback and Baylor radio analyst J.J. Joe will join us at 4:45. Also, Phil Bennett with his weekly segment joins us today just after 5 o'clock, and we'll discuss many things with David Hellman, Fox Sports at 5:30. We're now joined by John Bianco, and again, the senior AD, UT associate senior AD for communications, joins us. We've known John, I have a long time, and a couple of different times with UT in the media relations department. John, it's David Smoak with Paul Catalina and also Craig Smoak. When you discuss the legacy of Bill Little, is that almost impossible to wrap your arms around him?
My favorite, yes, absolutely. And I appreciate you guys having me on to talk about, somebody who's obviously really special to a whole lot of people. But people ask me, what's your favorite memory? And I like every conversation I've had with him every day. So yeah, it's really hard, especially, considering working at a place like this and the fact that the position he has here and his love for this place, his passion for this place, and he lived it every day. So it's, it's really hard to put into words his legacy.
John, one of the things just from the outside looking in, as someone who's been in this business a long time, I've always thought that DeLoss Dodds was the kind of the trailblazer of the new athletic director, and Bill Little has probably changed what your job is and many people's jobs are in information in college sports, didn't he?
Well, it's interesting. And then when you mentioned DeLoss, because he's obviously the godfather of athletics directors, and Bill showed him the ropes. So that's how long he's been around here. But from his standpoint, the thing that I do think is really cool about Bill is that how he adapted to how our industry changed over the years and how he was, so open and willing to find new ways to tell stories. But at the end of the day, the lessons I learned and the things I think about with everything I do from Bill is relationships and caring for people. And he was the best listener I've ever been around. So those are things that you obviously can't do with an AI instrument or analytics or anything like that. So at the heart of it all, the lessons that I try to pass on to people in my office that he passed on to me was just watching how he worked with people.
And he was multidimensional. He wore a lot of hats, didn't he, John?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Analyst, radio broadcaster, analyst, pitching if there was MC needed at any time, and virtually speaker at every event. They're there's a ton of different hats, and he kind of moved around in different, expanded his position while he was here, even doing some things back in the day that would be considered marketing and branding. There's never been a better brand ambassador for the University of Texas than Bill Little. So he crossed into a lot of paths to the, Mac Brown's communications guy, the Lost Dodgers communications guy, administrator over the entire media relations department, and then adding in, the extensions of some of the brand initiatives back in the day and things. So yes, he wore virtually any hat you gave him, he'd put it on and do it in a first-class manner.
If the entire database of Longhorn sports history had been erased somehow, could you have built back almost all of it, starting with just Bill, starting day one, and kind of like just going forward till right then?
Boy, I'd be in big trouble if it did, unless I had all of my emails on a USC stick. Because one thing I have done, because if somebody asked a question that I didn't easily know the answer to or didn't know where to look, I mean, he was a phone call away or a text away, and if he didn't know it immediately, within 5 minutes he'd be back with his research. And I have all those emails, all those texts, and I've kept them, screenshots of them. So I would have to piece by piece build it back together, but it would be in the image of what Bill has been sending me and talking to me about over the years. But yeah, it will be hard to replace. And those phone calls, honestly, as I think through it, he's going to be impossible to replace when it comes to, some people have asked me recently, how do you put into perspective what Bill Little meant to the University of Texas? And I said, hang on a second. Oh, I can't call Bill and ask him.
Yeah.
But, he was a human database.
John, you can see the who's who of people who have mentioned what he meant to them and how he touched their lives in many ways, worked with him, etc. Mac Brown said it. I reached out to him. That's the first person I thought about, to be honest with you, because I used to get interviews through Bill when Mac was there. And, how he's just a great man and a professional. What was it like yesterday hearing, I'm sure, from dozens upon dozens upon dozens of people about his life and what he meant to UT?
Oh, I honestly, I spent a good chunk of the day Saturday just kind of going through that's one of the blessings of social media is that a lot of people will comment on there and reading through those comments. And then at the same time, I'm getting pinged with texts and spent some time talking to Colt McCoy last night, who's, I don't know if there's a family that overall that Bill was closer than to the whole McCoy Shipley connection. And, we talked about some memories and, thinking back to the days, and just the thing that's great is if there were things you wanted somebody to say about you, if you were no longer around, everybody says them, and they're consistent words. Like, he was the kindest man I ever met. When I talked to him, I felt like I was the most important person in the room. He genuinely cared, loving, passionate about his job, and they're all things. It's consistent, the same, 5 to 10 words or phrases. But on top of that, literally everybody had a story that directly reflected to whatever example they were using. And it's just the depth of connections and relationships and things he did for people over the years, it runs really, really deep.
So how does Texas honor him going forward? I know that there's a couple of more weeks until your first game. How will UT try to, keep his legacy not intact, because it's going to be intact forever? But how do you honor someone like Bill Little?
We're kind of talking through some things we can do. It's pretty hard to find ways that he hasn't already been honored. I walk into the press boxes at baseball and football every day, and it's the Bill Little Media Center. Mm-hmm. So it's tough to top that, but we're definitely talking through some ways we can do it. And I definitely, from my perspective, as important as he knew the media was, he always said it was the window to the world, our window to the world, and it's our job to make sure that people got to know the stories of what was going on here. So I want to keep his legacy alive, to things like this and encourage people to continue to talk about his legacy and who he was, and tell as many stories as we can through our website and our content outlets. But what other things we do around the game or things like that is that's stuff we're still talking about.
Last question about just your role itself, and of course you've been around for a long time yourself. How is it trying to focus on this year and yet knowing the changes that come next June and July in the SEC? Has that been difficult?
I don't think so, only because I think a lot of people here know that they want to finish the Big 12 the right way and win as many championships as we can. So pretty laser focused on that. We are having a lot of discussions. Obviously, there's going to be some transition in all areas and how you manage things going forward. But most of that's behind the scenes and does make it a little bit of a juggling act. But we'll certainly be ready. And fortunately, I had the experience of doing that previously with our move to the Big 12, and so I have some things to lean back on. But right now, the most important thing is what's going on in the Big 12 and staying on top of that.
Talk you very much for your time reminiscing about Bill Little. John, I know you've had a crazy busy 24 hours. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I appreciate you talking about Bill.
Yes, sir. John Bianco, Texas Associate Athletic Director for Media Relations Communications at UT.
Yeah, and I only met Bill Little a few times, but it was kind of always astounding how much he knew. He and Gil Brandt, for me, are guys that you would just talk to them, and it would just be floored with how much retention or knowledge they would have. And I remember talking to Bill one night at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. It was the very famous Ricky Williams thing, and I kind of crossed paths with him, and he said, "I saw you guys finally got Ricky." I said, "Yeah, it wasn't easy." And then he told me 3 stories in 90 seconds about it was not the first time, and it was just still. I was like, "Oh my God!" I felt like I walked into a documentary.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable.
He was phenomenal.
I got nothing. I didn't know him. I didn't get to meet him like y'all did, so that's why I'm not chiming in. But sounds like a great man, and I don't have anything to add personally. But sorry for the loss. Clearly affected a lot of people.
No, it did. When we come back, we can.
I do have one note though that's an aside to that, and it's something that came down in the last hour that I think is notable to our Big 12 leaning audience, and that is Iowa State running back Jarrell Brock has now voluntarily left the program officially, coming from multiple reports, caught up in the gambling episode as we came to learn, what was that, a couple weeks ago now at this point, and you knew that some punishment was coming his way, and he may not play again, but rather than wait for any type of official punishment, Iowa State's starting running back Jarrell Brock has voluntarily left per an athletic department spokesperson and various reports, including Randy Peterson. So I don't know what that means as far as the investigation goes, but that answers the question about how much they'll get out of Jarrell Brock this year and vice versa, and that leaves them, I don't have a deep knowledge, but that takes away not only your starter, but also one of your more senior players on the entire roster. So now you're looking at, I think, some sophomores and some freshmen doing a heavy part of the lifting for you in the backfield this year. So the story that keeps on giving negatively to Iowa State fans.
Yeah, I feel really bad for Iowa State. Look, these guys brought this on themselves, obviously. That's not who I feel bad for. But there's a team full of guys who didn't and that have to go play a season that are now caught up in this. And when you have Northwestern, same thing, is that there's a bunch of people who are caught up in it who didn't have anything to do with it. And we experienced it here at Baylor. There's a bunch of people who have nothing to do with anything bad that happened anywhere, but they're in the wake of the hurricane, so to speak.
Collateral damage.
And it's just a long time of a season to where, when it ended, I just remember when 2016 ended here, there was no, you have those, feelings like, oh, bummer, this was such a fun season. Oh, I can't believe it's over. When the last month of that season, you were just like, can they get this thing over with? Because it is harsh, and I think that's going to probably happen at Iowa State a little bit. And we'll see what Matt Campbell can do to rally the emotional troops. I mean, I don't think X's and O's are going to be a problem with him. It's just your emotions play such a huge part in it. And the same thing at Northwestern is, how do you even get to a point where you're not thinking about and dealing with it every single week?
I'd still much rather have Iowa State's situation than anything that Baylor went through. But I know what you mean, that 2016 season, it fell off a cliff. They started off 6-0, and it was like, we're going to show people. And then the moment they lose that first game, next thing you know, you're hearing about coaches golfing during, what would normally be like on-campus time, and, taking naps, and, just all sorts of absurdity. And subsequently a 6-loss streak to close the year. And then just the magical bowl game win, in the Cactus Bowl, like a nice cherry on top of what was otherwise an S Sunday there for the last couple of months. And, you were just waiting for it to end. Remember when Patrick Mahomes was throwing for like a gazillion yards against them in Jerry's World?
Yep.
And one of the assistant coaches' wives was talking about how they already lined up jobs during the game. That was fun time. So Iowa State, this sucks, no doubt about it. And what looked like it was going to be a more promising season than it appears to be now, certainly, expectations have been dampened to some extent. And that's just really unfortunate, but it could be worse. It could be that 2016 Baylor season for sure. You'd much rather have what Iowa State has. But this is just a sorry way to, lead into the season, and just you get all your excitement going, and you wait for this time period, and here in the last month it's been nothing but now you're starting quarterbacks caught up in this, you're starting running backs caught up in this, and it just is a really dirty situation for the fans and for those who, like you said, didn't do anything wrong. So
the players, the teammates that are just sitting there going like, you're talking about who would have been your starting quarterback, although I know they had competition, and then Jaleel Brock, who you Jarrell Brock, who you heard about even when, oh my goodness, I just went blank on the young man that was there that was so good. Breece Hall. And so it sucks, and we'll see how sometimes that can somehow bond a team together, but you're losing some dudes right there.
I'll never forget talking to Ryan Reed, who was a cornerback on the Baylor team 3 weeks in a row, the last 3 weeks of the season. And he was an optimistic guy by nature, but you could just tell that they were drained. Mm-hmm. Like they were just drained. And that's what I hope doesn't happen at these other places. But I would caution fans of either school to just be, buckled in for what's going to be an emotionally choppy season at best.
4:16 is the time, and this is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate at TexasBeefHouse.com. Samantha Duvall joins us. She's the marketing director who knows all of the specials and also the events coming up. And thank you very much, as always, for your time. So all of these holidays are over. We've hit the meat of, literally, of the summer. And your thoughts about as you hit the month of August and into football season, Samantha?
Football season's right around the corner, so that means it's perfect time for tailgating. The best time to grab our hamburger patties is right now through the end of July. We still have our sale going on with our regular patties and our jalapeno and cheese patties. They're $12 a package, so that's 4 patties to a package. It's perfect for the time for football, gather all your family around. That way you can grill it up.
Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu and how they age it as well. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Memphis, this is from Brett McMurphy. Memphis has ticket promotion where fans can buy a $60 ticket for the opening game against Bethune-Cookman. If they win, Memphis, fans get free ticket to the next home game, and this continues for each home game until Memphis loses a game at home. How long will the free ticket last? Their home schedule: Bethune-Cookman, Navy, Boise State, Tulane, and USF. There is a chance. Well, we know Boise State's good. We know that, and of course, Memphis can be at times, pretty good in football. And then Tulane on October 13th. And then SMU to close out the year.
Man, I think that you might get 3 free games or 2 free games in there with Navy and Boise State, because if Navy, they beat Bethune, then the Navy game is free. If they beat Navy, then Boise State is free. But even Navy, Notre Dame's going to have a very good team, and they're playing Navy on Saturday in Ireland, and I guarantee you that there's a bit of a knot, as even as down as Navy's been recently, about playing that offense, and you just get on the wrong side of a Navy team that's doing well, and you have to play their game a little bit, then that can be troubling.
Yeah, you look up and there's 9 minutes have been milked off the clock, with a drive that they have. If you don't get to them early,
I think that Boise State, Tulane back to back is going to be at home. It's going to be really tough for that free promotion to keep rolling.
Yeah, one quick thing, leave that up, Garrett, but I did look up the Colorado TCU line. I know we're about 20 minutes past that.
Your mic is, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
What?
It's sideways.
Okay. Anyways, that was a 3-touchdown line. I was just going to update that. But, yeah, interesting promotion, the cool idea. And if they keep winning, then that's great. You're losing out on ticket money, I suppose, but your fans are probably jam-packing the stands because there's free tickets. So seems like a nifty idea to try to, get butts in seats. And, the more you win, the crazier it'll get. But certainly you're not banking on them just rolling through that schedule. As mentioned, I mean, by September 14th in Navy, that could go right off the rails, and certainly the week after as well, and the week after that. And I don't know how good USF will be this year, but SMU should be pretty dang good. But if you're in November 18th and you've got a streak anyways, then who cares? You're going to be, living the high life. So, yeah, that's a cool promotion, and, see how it goes for them. But you can definitely see where that might stop a little quick after that Bethune game.
So Greg Sankey's talking again. He spoke with ESPN, a recent interview, and he said right now, he, of course, the SEC commissioner, right now you put in bold letters that things are going to change, period. And we're all going to have to be prepared to deal with that change, period. Last time I think anyone said something about put it in bold 3-inch headlines was Jimmy Johnson, that they were going to beat the 49ers in 1994, I think it was, or 93. He was talking about also the college football expansion. We need to rethink. He said this before. The circumstances have changed. We need to reconsider the format. I'm not convinced we need to reconsider the number of teams. I've been clear that I would be okay with an 8-team playoff with no conference champion access. That wasn't, if you will, politically tenable within the group. So as we continue to look at the models, we came up with 6-and-6 model. But the circumstances have changed in a meaningful way, and my inclination is we need to re-examine the current format. So here's one of the things he said. He was discussing TCU. He goes, we've had teams in the championship game. Obviously, last year the championship game was a blowout, but we had two teams that have done really well in the semifinals. He was talking about, you can see what he's doing. He's planting the seed for the SEC as if they need help to get maybe one more team on top of what might be 2 or 3 anyway into the championship game format and also the tournament.
Look, I hope that they keep it the same and they can just kind of move it down the line a little bit. Maybe, I mean, look, the only thing to me that changed, I mean, obviously you're not going to have, the Pac-12 around anymore, but, the only thing that would change, I guess you would get 2 G5 teams in there, which they don't want. So, but I think it's a slippery slope when you start trying to peel back the number to 8. I think they need to keep it at 12 and then figure out who the 12 are.
This is just another step in the direction of the SEC and the Big Ten taking full control over everything. I don't know how y'all see it overall, but that's all I see it as let's get rid of that. There's one more spot or multiple spots that, can now go to the teams that we have instead, which I think was always the end goal. I think that the Big 12 blew up their plans. And that the Pac-12 was supposed to be the one living after all this was said and done. It would have been interesting how that would have worked. I guess, the Big Ten would have gotten the LA schools, but then just stayed away from Oregon and Washington, I suppose. But something had to give as we were going through this consolidation period, and the Big 12 just so happened to maneuver well enough to be the one that was getting the last laugh at the end. But, how do they fit into the grand plans down the line? I don't know. But I do think that you're seeing the maneuvering the last couple of years. All of it's been maneuvering a certain way to shape up to be what people in some cases fear, or not fear, but just don't want to see, which is a 2-conference college football system that pretends to be the NFL when it's really not. And so, if you're in favor of that, then hey, I think we're seeing more momentum head in that direction with, things like, let's revisit the playoff now that this has happened. And, let's see if we can't change this thing up. I don't think it's going to bode well for the Tulanes of the world, the steps being made moving forward, that they're going to have this great place in the, the postseason. And some will say, well, who are they anyways? And Auburn should have that spot, or, a team in the SEC or blah, blah, blah. And I get all that, but man, it's going to be chocolate and vanilla here pretty soon, the way things are going. And I just don't care for having only 2 options. But that is where, a lot of the signs are pointing right now.
Here's another quote from him. And, it was 65-7 last year, Georgia beating TCU in the championship game. And the year before, we had 2 teams in the national championship. And I think we were 2 pretty decisive victories in the semifinals. So at least from an SEC perspective, when we've had access, we've proven the wisdom of the selection committee.
Yeah, but also if you've rigged the game for 25, more than that, but when you've rigged the game for as long as you have, as far as
by the way, let's not forget that TCU beat Michigan.
I was going to say, they beat Michigan to get into the championship, so I don't know why we're just glossing over that as though I don't know, that seems like you earned your spot by beating one of the top 4 teams in the country. Yep. You proved that you belonged there by beating Michigan, so that doesn't just get glossed over because, what happened after that wasn't good. I don't like that little tactic, or if that was intentional or that's just the way that it reads. Yeah, let's not gloss over TCU winning a semifinal game.
But when you've created a system that makes it so hard for anybody else but the people that you created it for to get in, you can't just say, well, we've proven that, Yeah, because you built it that way.
Well, here, Sankey, before the quote, is unconcerned about lingering accusations that the committee has shown a bias towards SEC schools.
Why would he be concerned about that? I mean, if I get a free beer every time I walk into my favorite bar, and then somebody down the bar is like, why does Paul always get a free beer? I'm not going to be like, well, I mean, I'm not mad about it. Like, why?
Well, y'all saw the big story, and I forget where I saw this because it was on the way over here, and so you can maybe track it down. I'm trying to remember the wording of it, but it was a story of like, well, the playoff committee, the playoff folks aren't so sure about the TV money, and the TV money right now is pretty tight, and there's big bids for the semis and the championship, but those first-round games – TV networks aren't biting at those and really ready to spend big dollar. And it's like, you're already setting the chairs. You're already setting the table. Now it's going to be, well, we need the big drawing teams and we need, to justify the money. It's already scheming up to be, oh, well, we have to do it this way. And you can see it coming from a mile away of like, oh yeah, all this is taking place. And all of a sudden the folks in charge of the TV networks are worried about the cost of the first round games. I mean, maybe it might have been Bob Thompson that was commenting on that. There might be some truth to that. But it also does feel like the narrative is taking shape, if you will. You know what I mean? So that's going to be something fascinating to watch as they do go and revisit the playoff structure post all of this realignment, which, I guess there's still some movement to be had, obviously out west. But for the most part, seems like it's pretty steady and done for the time being. And, what they come out on the other side is like, yeah, I think there will be less automatic bids or no automatic bids, what have you. And beyond that, who knows? But the narrative's getting put in place, and you can see it all start to line up to where if you're looking for the two-team league, there's signs pointing in that direction.
You know what? I don't know why this is so hard to figure out. You have all these teams in Division I or in the FBS. You have now this playoff with 12 teams. And I get the SEC's trying to position themselves. They've already been in position. And I get their history as well, as they've proven it many, many times. But it just seems like this is so difficult. Get the 12 teams, make it 7 conference champions, 5 conference champions, at-large teams. I don't care, but it doesn't need to be any kind of a turf war to get there. It just seems to me, here are the teams that get in, here are the ones that don't, and then if you don't get enough love, then get better, win conference titles, beat teams inside the top 15 or 20, and when you have a chance to play somebody in the Big Ten, probably as much the SEC, beat them. Go win. I know it's not easy. Go win those games. Texas is going to play Alabama the second week or whatever it is in September. Baylor's going to play Utah, a ranked top 15 team, yes, I know, in the Pac-12. And they're Oregon and Tech. Go win those games. Teams from the conference, go beat those teams. And that's how you get noticed. Eventually, you just bull yourself through the door, and you don't allow any kind of like, well, we're not really sure.
Yeah, I also think, and I'm going to go back to Craig here about they're already starting the propaganda of the money, which kind of all traces back to when a few people want to have the money and not share it with the other conferences or whatever, you get down to that, like, well, look, they don't even know what to do with this money. We're the only ones who are responsible enough to handle it. We can't just, so now there's not any. Like, you want all this money, there's not any. You're like, well, but feels like there would be if you guys would just tell us how much there is. Like, if we could all do the math on it together, but then it's not really how it works, and yeah, I get nervous when you start to hear propaganda about like, oh, well, maybe they don't want to buy this. The TV networks would be thrilled to have more games.
They will get whatever they want from that.
Yeah.
They will get whatever they want.
I do think there might be a lack of money in terms of like you can't just spend billions on everything. So like all of a sudden you're adding all these new games and you're asking the networks who are already spending hundreds of millions to spend hundreds of millions more. I can see that, but at the same time, every time I hear that, it's like you go back to, all right, cable's dying. What does cable basically live off of now? What is their most successful thing to broadcast? Live sports. So like in the face of all this TV cord cord cutting, all this argument and TV money and all that, what's the one thing that people always come back to the table for, and what do they desire, and what do they want, and what do they need in some cases? Live sports. So now you're adding more live sports, more college football playoff games. Yes, the price tag will be high, and as Bob Thompson pointed out, don't overestimate yourself like the Pac-12 did, where that's now, as he pointed out, become a term of overestimating your value as Pac-12ing yourself. But at the same time, I find it hard to believe that they're not going to, still be raking, fistful of dollars in by the second with this new playoff. And it just does feel like there's a little bit of posturing going on and maybe politicking with the current state of negotiations. So they're, maybe trying to send a message one way or the other. I don't know. But it does feel like, something's going to have to give as far as the money and certainly there's going to be that lingering fear until there's not, until the playoff is settled for a good long while about what ulterior motives other bigger, stronger, richer conferences may have. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, it's the ones who need to be posturing and setting those are the other conferences. Not just be happy to be there. They need to have some. But again, go win big games. Go win big games. And that's the one thing. You can say whatever you want. The SEC has won a chunk of them. I mean, against each other, and then again in the playoffs, and they've won a chunk of them when it comes to the semifinals and also in the championship game. It's 4:34. Now, speaking of, Paul, you sent this note, and I kind of read over it. This is a little bit above my technological pay grade. Apple wants to be a force in live sports. Buying ESPN could be the answer. This is a story by Michael McCarthy.
Yeah, it's for Front Office Sports, and it said, if Apple really wants to be the force of live sports, then buying ESPN, and this is what a lot of people in the industry think they could be setting themselves up to do. The only thing is Apple, the reason they have this gigantic $1 trillion, it's probably more than just $1 trillion, but $1 trillion war chest, it's because they don't really make acquisitions. They just kind of build their own stuff. Apple's not full of buying other companies. That's kind of what Microsoft did, or they bought some other companies. Apple really doesn't do that. They just kind of build their own thing that is in competition with yours. So to make it simpler, Smokey, everybody in this room, I think we're all iPhone users, but if you ever see a feature that's on a non-iPhone and it's not on the iPhone, and then like a phone generation later it all of a sudden is, Apple just kind of waits and watches in the market and sees what people like, and then they build their own thing. So this is something they can't really build their own thing. They can't really build their own ESPN because it's there, but they could buy it, and this might be their first big acquisition. And let's face it, the way we're headed, there's going to be 3 companies in 20 years anyway that own all the stuff. But they could buy it, and then that would be their big move. We talked about the Pac-12. It was all or nothing. The NFL Sunday Ticket was all or nothing. Baseball, MLS is kind of everything. Baseball's the only thing where they kind of dip their toe in the water yet, just because the media rights on that are so it's really confusing how everything was going and the way they had everything sold out. But if they could get baseball all or nothing, I think that they would. So we'll see what happens down the line. I think that's something that's probably years in the future. But would it surprise me to see ESPN be their first big acquisition in the content wars? No, not at all.
When we come back, we're going to go into the chat room. We'll hear what is on your mind today. In fact, Jeremy Callahan talking about Texas beats Georgia, UCF beating Auburn, K-State needs to beat LSU. Well, those don't really count. You hear it all the time, Kansas State, LSU. Okay, well, that's one, and that's true. Jeremy, you're right. There are some of those battles that not just the Big 12, but other conferences win. But then, okay, we'll do it again. You have to kind of validate your wins. And that happens too. You win enough of those, though, there won't need to be any kind of validated. And especially if you are K-State or you are TCU, it's almost like, okay, you did that last year. Can you do it again? Because you're not a logo. You're not a brand. And yet, it's frustrating. It's part of the politics of the game. That's why I love the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Who gives 2 flips about what Florida Atlantic had to do? They just went out and won. Am I right? Florida Atlantic in basketball. They just went out and won. Well, yeah, but, okay, win again. Yeah, but, then win again. And then next year they'll be not more just a Cinderella. They'll have to go do it again. It's part of just I don't know how to explain it, but you just got to win big games over and over and over again. But, Jeremy, you make a pretty good point. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on. They're the people that I've counted on a great deal over the last couple of years. And if you are in the market for a new pre-owned vehicle, you're looking for just great customer service, just service on your vehicle, all those different things, whatever it is that you're looking to do, they can be the people and will be the people that you can count on for whatever it is you're trying to take care of. And right now, in front of the dealership, the entire roadway in front of them, basically, Highway 6 is in a complete mess due to construction. So they're trying to make it easier to buy a new Buick, GMC, or Cadillac. Right now, most 2023 GMC Sierra 1500s are discounted thousands. Qualified buyers can finance for 0.9%. And with dozens of Sierras on the lot, Richard Carr has the inventory, price, and financing to get you in a new Sierra today. They've also got the ranked #1 overall brand for new vehicle quality by J.D. Powers in Buick with their luxury SUVs without the luxury price tags. Right now, save $3,250 on a new 2023 Buick Encore GX. Plus, qualified buyers can get 1.9% financing and no payments until 2024. So there's just a few of the offers, or a couple of the offers they have for you. Plenty more can be talked about or learned by giving them a phone call or going by the dealership or just visiting the website to see all of their great offers. But in addition to the new vehicles, they've also got a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks as well, many under $25K. And their financing philosophy at Richard Carr is 100% credit approval. They look to say yes when others say no. So whether you're looking to buy new, buy pre-owned, or you want to check out their award-winning service department, looking to stand by, as always, and keep your car or truck on the road in the best possible shape it can be in to give you that peace of mind when driving it, check out the people who've been in business for 24 years in Central Texas and built a reputation as the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Richard Carr, run by proud Central Texans, proud Baylor Bears. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
I hate my job, but I don't mind getting up in the morning. I dread each day, but I can't wait to get out of bed. You ask me why, and what I'll say to you is true. Well, you can get breakfast tacos at Rudy's Barbecue. Scrambled eggs and brisket, they ain't fooling around. Salsa drap, son, they're the best in town. Barbecue for breakfast, yes, it's true. Put a smile on your morning at Rudy's Barbecue. Next in line.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs, too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is a premier elite life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes every week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, bars, silver sneakers, and more. If you haven't been to Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness lately, you're missing out on the improvements. New flooring in the weight room floor and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added to the weight room and group exercise room, and many new machines have been added and arriving moving constantly on the weight room floor. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new ellipticals on the spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, Alex Box, and welcome to Nathan Roach, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. A kids club included with your membership, plus sauna, whirlpool, and tanning bed. 16 tennis courts plus a beautiful stadium court, and longtime youth tennis pro Britt Coleman and assistant junior Kenna. Adult tennis lessons and clinics with Blake, and the commitment to pickleball with 8 courts and instructor Jody Thurman. Visit the website at wacotennis.com or visit us at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness next to Hawaiian Falls on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This segment with former Baylor quarterback and Baylor radio analyst J.J. Joe is sponsored by Alliance Bank Central Texas, where customers have confidence that their financial needs are in good hands with 2 locations in Waco.
J.J. Joe will be joining us on Mondays at about right now at around 4:45 to look back and also look forward and also discuss teams around the Big 12 and much more. Greg Smoak, Paul Catalina, and David Smoak. JJ, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. When will you know whether or not Blake Shapen is different than he was last year? Will it be a throw? Will it be how they play against Texas State? Will it be when they're tested even maybe more so by Utah?
How have you guys been doing? I'm glad we're almost back to another season. So I'll tell you, I've been following all the news, and of course, I came down in the spring, got to see the summer spring and the spring game. And really, for Blake, I do expect, Smoak will leap, to be honest with you, because, only thing I can do is think about my personal experience where I had a year where I played 4 or 5 games, and I played a full season, then I came back. So I expect him to play much better, and I don't think we'll really know until he faces Utah, because Utah will be a really good team, and he will catch a little heat. His progressions will be sped up, and he'll have to make some plays and things happen, and we'll just have to see how he performs.
What do you think the biggest challenge outside of him on offense will be? Rebuilding an offensive line or finding wide receivers that can make plays for him?
That's an interesting question. I really think that the receivers will be much better. We got to remember, they were breaking in a lot of young guys last year. That was my concern last year. We had a great line coming back, but I think Coach overestimated a little bit the impact of the lack of experience on the edge, and we saw it in the BYU game early. Monterey went out. No one else was out there really to kind of make plays, and we felt the loss of Taekwon and Estrada and all those guys. So I tell you, I am concerned about the line. That's where everything starts. And the good news, you had a couple of really good transfers in the Barrington brothers and some young guys that'll come along. But up front is where I start. I know the defense has some stuff they got to work on, but man, if those front 5 guys don't pull it together, it'll be a long season in a hurry. So I'm really interested after losing so many great guys from up front.
JJ, looks like the running back room will be healthy and have some pretty good numbers to start off with. That was obviously a big part of last year. Right out of the gates was Tay McWilliams getting hurt, and then just your depth was gone pretty much right away. With Richard Reese, though, in particular, after getting thrown to the wolves the way he was and getting all the carries that he did as a true freshman, how do you look for him to improve now with all that experience behind him in a full off season?
Well, I'm looking for big things. I really like the backfield combination. Man, when I heard about Aqualan, I was sick because I figured the way we like to run the ball, it really was going to be great to have those 3 guys. But I think with Reese and I believe it's Richardson, I really think they could be a great 1-2 punch. My only concern is durability, and Reese did a great job last year. But this year you're going behind a new set of guys up front, and it just takes a little time. And the challenge will be for this group of guys is that the runners, Reese and Richardson, is that you have this new group that's trying to figure it out, and in week 2 you got these guys who can really play football come to town. And it may be one of those games where the line steps up, and they play really well, or it may be one of those games where, Blake, as the veteran now, has to carry just a little bit more to get him through that game. And I'm thinking that may be the kind of game it's going to be. And that's why I say by week 2, I think we'll know where Blake is. And the pressure will be on to see if Sawyer comes in, or Blake will be then talking about, hey, potential postseason stuff already. So we'll see.
How much can Richard Reese get more physical but still remain who he is? In other words, whether it's 2 pounds or 3 pounds or 4 pounds, I don't know. He can't put on too much without all of a sudden losing what he is. But with just an off season of weight and the strength and conditioning help him?
Oh, definitely. It's interesting. I think Reese played last year, like 170, 180. I mean, he was small. Literally small. I don't know the exact size, but I mean, Ricky was saying, he's like, yeah, this guy's small. And that's one of our concerns. Maybe he's 190, but I remember a teammate of mine, actually David Mims. He played in the league a few years. I remember Dave came to Baylor from Dangerfield at 5'9", 168. And he could run. Elusive. He was that string of really great Dangerfield teams. He played on a couple of those. But when Dave left, his last 2 years, Dave was 5'9", 205. And he ran a 4.35 and was elusive. So I think Reese is in that category. It's some guys who can put on weight and it's well distributed and they don't really lose much. And I think Reese is one of those guys. So we'll see. But I think he has a lot of room to put on that frame. Maybe I'm not going to say it's 30 pounds, but I think he has about 15 that he can put on his frame, and we still have the same Richard Reese.
JJ, I covered David Mims and those great Dangerfield teams. He listens. I'm not sure if he's watching today. He loves this show. So if he is today, I bet he has a big old smile on his face.
That's my man. We were roommates, so I had to give him some love. But David was a small guy. He was one of those guys that Taft recruited. Taft was great for finding guys and developing in them, and David was one of those.
JJ, one of the things that Coach Aranda had to do was kind of get the locker room back into alignment, so to speak, kind of like a chiropractor, and there were a lot of transfers out. Additions by subtraction is not really the term I would like to use because some of these guys will probably help the places that they go, but in an emotional sense, which is something that is very big for Dave Aranda, is that really what he was going for? Was, even if it comes down to play on the field 1A or B, if it's really person over player, you have to get everybody in lockstep, 1 through 100, everybody who's in that locker room.
Yeah, I'm really glad for Coach David. I'm interested to see this year. I think this will be, I'm not going to say the first year, but one of those key years where it's really his. He won't have the remnants of a rule staff. And I think we underestimated a little bit, the loss of some of those coaches like McGuire and its others. And, a lot of those players were close to those guys. And then if you listen to Coach during the year, I remember him talking about, weaponizing poor performance and some stuff. So I think it was an overhaul where he needed to change some players, maybe some players that after a couple of championship game appearances, 1 win, 1 loss or whatever, felt a little entitled. He lost some really, really good veteran players from Bernard and Petrie and all those guys. And then I just think the mix wasn't working. And maybe he, like he said, he wasn't as tough as he needed to be. So I think he has the staff in place. He has the kind of players he wants. They're young a little bit in some places. But I think all of that needs to happen. He needs to change Coach Robert. He needs to do all those changes. And we'll see how effective they are here in this first go at it. But I anticipate them to be a very competitive team, and then we'll see if they can win some of those close games.
JJ, this is, aside from Baylor, but Baylor related, what have you made of the last month or so and all of the chaos of realignment and knowing now that, hey, this is you're about to enter a very unique year as a broadcaster. The final Texas game, no Oklahoma, although the final run for them in the Big 12, of course, the 4 new schools, and then next year now 4 more coming in. Just a lot to kind of take in, but what has been your thoughts on watching the shifting landscape of the Big 12 and college football?
I'll tell you, I'm happy for Baylor because for a while there, you guys know, man, when this thing first started, I'm thinking that, we may be in a conference that, we're all just wishing we weren't in or something. But I love the new Big 12. I love what Yormark has done. I think I posted something like, hey, man, he was a godsend for us, really. But I like where we ended up. And I'm looking forward to it. We've got some really nice places to go, a very competitive conference. And I really still believe, while this thing will be crazy, I really still believe that college football will still be pretty relatively regional. It'll look a little different. We probably won't play UT or A&M, maybe once every 20 years if we're lucky. But it's been crazy. I think it still has a little bit of steam left. But I really thought college football, it's just, and I'm on this side. I just feel like it's such big business now in this country. If something's big business, two things have to happen. Eventually, everyone has to share in the pie, and that's start to happen. It's just the way our country runs. And the second thing is that, eventually, football, they'll have to make a decision if football keeps being governed by the NCAA and stays under this model. It's just a really big business, and it'll be interesting to see what the next 5 to 10 years look like.
JJ, do you have any of the new schools that you're looking forward to as a broadcaster visiting maybe the most?
We went to BYU last year, man, and that was really good. That was a beautiful place. Not looking forward to going there in November or anything, but that was great. Going to BYU, kind of Salt Lake City is just north of there, so that's not that big. But I've been to Arizona, right? I was hoping that we would probably get a sniff of Oregon, but I knew Oregon and Washington they were really holding out for the big. But I'd never been to Oregon. I was hoping to kind of get that run. We've been to Seattle, but not to Eugene. So I'm looking forward to all those new places, man. I really am, and I think it's going to be a great run, I think.
JJ, as a quarterback, back to when I opened up about shaping the improvement in the offseason. Is there more improvement during spring, or is it during August, or is it too late to improve too much when you get to August?
That's a great question. I think the off season is essential because there's a lot of stuff that happens. The strength and conditioning coaches are going to get you right, so you don't have to really worry about it. Am I going to be stronger, faster, more agile? They're going to get you there whether you want to get there or not. I think it's the stuff that I've read from Blake, and I've watched several interviews from him of him. I'm sorry, and what I liked to hear was the film study. Number one. He saw what teams were doing to him. And you have to be able to watch video and film over the off season to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do this year. This is the look they gave me, and be prepared to adjust to that. And the spring can help you with that. Spring, when you actually are able to get on the field. And then for Blake, I think really it's the technical work. I'll be interested to see what kind of technical work he put in. And you really can't tell what that's going to be until he gets under the heat. Spring, they don't put you under the heat. He's not getting hit. You don't know what you're going to do with your feet, your eyes, and your mechanics and all that until the bullets get to flying for real. And trust me, they won't fly. I mean, Texas State is going to be a solid, it's going to be a contest, but Baylor should find a way to win that game. And they really won't start flying till Utah comes because they're going to bring some noise, they're going to bring heat, and then we'll see technically if he's put it together. But really, I think that offseason is very important, Smoak.
JJ, we appreciate your time. Look forward to this on Mondays with you. JJ Joe, former Baylor quarterback, Baylor radio analyst with us on 365 Sports. Coming up next, Phil Bennett on many things college football. Phil Bennett is going to join us on Mondays. There's a couple of times he might be like he was last week in the middle of having what was he having? A drink on the West Coast. In the middle of at the Beverly Hills Hilton. But he's back in town. Phil Bennett, this is 365 Sports.
Come shop the greatest selection in Central Texas and save big on Ram trucks during the Make This the Summer event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get a 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, 20% off MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. The choice is yours. Plus, if you're a first responder, you get an extra $500 bonus cash. We've got the inventory and we're making big deals. Hurry in today. They won't last long. Allen Samuels in Waco is the place to shop Ram trucks.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach, had him on last week. We're discussing a lot, of course, what's going on with the Big 12 and the new teams coming in. He's been at Arizona State. He joins us now on Mondays in the 5 o'clock hour, Paul, Craig, and David Smoak. So you were at the Beverly Hills Hilton. How long were you there? And are you done now with trips? Or you're retired. You can do whatever you want.
You know, we usually take a trip every summer through California just to enjoy it because it's got so many things. And it was a 10-day trip. We start at Laguna Beach, stay a couple of days there, a couple of days in Beverly Hills, 3 days in Carmel. We go to Sonoma for 3 days, and the last 2 days are in San Francisco. So we sort of cover the whole state.
Did you manage to keep the shopping down to a minimum in Beverly Hills, Coach? I got to tell you something. My wife, she works. She's a banker, does well, but
she's tired in her drum. I told her, I said, listen, we're going over to the shopping area. I said, I'm going to buy you something. And you know what she let me buy her? A pair of Nike shoes.
Wow.
I mean, so I'm married to a pretty good woman. Now, the wine at Mr. Chow's is a different. It was more than both our shoes. So that worked out.
So, Coach, here we are a couple weeks out. I mean, for some teams, it's actually a game week, but not until next week will it be game week for everybody. What's just this sort of like week before a game week like when it's, getting ready for a season opener?
Well, first of all, you're setting your roster. You're looking at your guys, your special team, your top 22 on both sides of the ball, and then you're looking at your depth. Who's going to play special teams? Hopefully your quarterback situation is defined, and you've got to, you start game prep. Probably today, the people who play this week, obviously, will be in game prep. The people that play the next week will probably start on Wednesday. So there's a lot of planning, getting situations. And the other thing for coaches is most of the times your first game, you have all your tape broke down, but you really start watching it. You start getting in your mindset, what's good, what's bad, how can we take advantage of them? So game planning, goes to another level.
Phil, were you one that a guy had to practice well, or did you know when you had some dudes that maybe weren't great practice players, but when the lights came on, how did you make those decisions?
Well, to say that you treated everybody the same would be a lie, Smoak. I mean, it's just not. It doesn't happen that way. Some kids, are unbelievable motivators. They do things you don't teach, and then some of them you have to push a little bit, and that doesn't make them bad kids. And I mean, that's what I learned is that just what you're saying. Then you get them in an environment in a game, and then they're better than they probably were in practice. Now, I will say this. Most of the time, the way we practice and in today's football, you can, with the game being, especially defensively and offense, everything is tempo. And you have to play. I have a saying, knowledge is power. And you've got to play smart. And if you're a guy that's not a great practice guy, you still got to be smart in knowing what you're doing. And I've had both, and I think you have to know the difference, but you have to put your best 11 on the field.
When do you start to get concerned if a team had, if you had a weakness on the defensive side of the ball? Do you really know about it until you play somebody else, or were there times in practice where you knew, look, it's going to be an adventure with this position this year, and we're just going to have to start now figuring out how to dig out of that hole?
Well, I think, Craig, it's part of good coaching. Everybody will know your strengths. You have to know your weaknesses, and you have to know, how can they expose me? What can I do to help them? If you're playing your best player, one of the things at North Texas, I had a little bitty line. I mean, we weren't very big, so we had to take some chances, move, and I tell people, I said sometimes our overall yards per game weren't good, but we made a lot of plays in the red zone. We got takeaways, and we had to be at Baylor the first 2 years I was there. You had to be really opportunistic. And so you look at that and you say, all right, this is what we can do. This is what we can't do. This is how we can protect ourselves.
Coach, what did you make of the job Brent Venables did last year as a first-year head coach, and particularly, obviously what they're trying to do on offense with Jeff Lebby, but knowing, the role of a defensive coordinator, becoming a head coach, and also knowing that offense, what are your expectations for Oklahoma, and what kind of jump, if any, they make, particularly defensively this season?
Well, first of all, Jeff did an outstanding job. He took a kid from UCF, and they were not the problem. Defensively, they were a mess. And I say that, I don't know. I know a lot of it was probably they weren't as talented as what I'm sure Brent and them would like to have been. But I could tell from the get-go, and I've known, too much stuff. They tried to do too much stuff, and they weren't very good at anything. And if there's anything that I've learned is when you're not very good, you've got to simplify what you're doing, know what you're capable of, and make sure you don't give things to opposing offenses. I remember watching the Texas game, and I could tell they were dialing it up on defense. They left people uncovered. I mean, they used to do it against us. Brent wants to be perfect in every call that he makes. Hard to do nowadays with tempo offense and stuff. You've got to incorporate an automatic system. I don't think they've ever done that. He didn't face it as much against Clemson. One of the games I remember vividly when I was at Baylor is North Carolina, when we played them in the bowl game. Art's last game had played Clemson for the championship. Seth Luttrell was the offensive coordinator at North Carolina, did, tempo, spread the field fast. And I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Smoak, but I think it was like a 42-40 game. And North Carolina got an onside kick late in the game. They didn't give it to them, or I think they would have beat Clemson in that ACC championship game. So Brett sort of struggled playing up with those things. And it's because he wants to be perfect. Now, he's still a heck of a coach. I'm not saying that at all. But the game, you better involve. And the thing I would bet this year, they're a lot more simple and sound on defense than they were last year.
Is that something you learned pretty quick when you were coaching against a high-tempo offense up-tempo offense in practice was as complex as I'd like to make this, I mean, you knew it from your side. There's no playbook on the other side of the ball. They're not carrying around anything and trying to, learn and memorize and had flashcards or anything. It was all simplicity that you had to respond in kind because the sweet spot of that offense is in its simplicity.
I don't think there's any doubt. I think you're dead right. If you try to sit there and you're trying to sub and you're trying to get the matchup, you're not going to play very well. Not against, and like I say, I can remember in 11, we were a patchwork defense. We beat Oklahoma. And if you remember, we had guys scot-free going down the field because they were trying to sub. They were trying to do this. And to do that, now, I learned firsthand. I remember, I tell the story, I'd played a few spread teams, but nothing. I'd played Art before, and I knew the simplicity, but I told our guys, I said, we've got to be different until we get these players. And I think I told David after the 2000, what was it, Dave? You came on the bus, 2012 Holiday Bowl. I said, we'll win the conference. We had gotten good enough. We had grown the second half of the year to be a championship defense, but we had to be simple. And Art would in practice. I told you the first day I ever practiced here, I think RG3 was 74 out of 75, and I walked off and I looked at Gush and I said, "What in the hell just happened?" and it's the truth. You have to modify. I say this again: automatic front and coverage. You've got to be simple. You've got to get lined up, or you're going to struggle.
How often did just going against that offense early on, and you were trying to you found the JUCO cornerbacks and I know Joe Williams was one, and I just went blank on KJ Morton. KJ Morton.
Yeah.
How many times
and my basketball player from Gonzaga.
Goodson.
Yeah.
How often did going against that offense in practice just like hurt the confidence of your defense?
Well, you know what? I want to tell you something. I used to tell them, and I think you and I talked about it. When we get moderately successful against these guys, doors are going to open for us. And I told the kid that. I didn't berate them. I said, once we become a defense that can moderately give these, and every guy on the staff, Randy, Art, all of them will tell you, from the middle of 12 on, after that fiasco at West Virginia, when we had some kids hurt, we got better.
We finished the year beating a very good, beat K-State. We beat Oklahoma State. And when we played UCLA, and their quarterback's still in the league, Eddie Lackey had gotten better. Hager we became a different team. But you have, it was a learning experience. And if I said anything different, I would be lying.
How much differently do you watch linebackers now than you did just 15 years ago in the way that this is a guy who can play linebacker in the modern context? Nobody's playing three of them anymore, really, Coach.
Well, you know, Craig, the biggest thing about linebackers today, you can see it in the NFL. I'm fixing to meet with the NFL staff here later on tonight that opens the season with Kansas City, and the college game is everywhere. The RPOs, different things, and yeah, it is like I said, linebackers have to be able to cover. They have to be able to set the front. I mean, they're almost your signal callers. They call the defense by personnel, by splits, by all those different things. And if you look, there's not a lot of 6'3", 245, 50 linebackers. Dave, you'll remember the Ray Nitschke's, the Dick Puckett, you know, all those guys. There's not many of those anymore. You know, somebody say the guy with the Cowboys. Well, listen, let's be honest. He's a defensive end.
Yeah.
You know, the kid from Boise's the linebacker. So, you know, it's a game of, you've got to be able to cover. You've got to be able to blitz. And you got to be good enough to stop the run. But the game has evolved. You look at Buffalo, you look at the Giants, you look at Kansas City, all those people, Seattle's doing it, are becoming more and more, you know, sideline to sideline, up tempo, and it's becoming more of a college game.
Phil, you mentioned that an NFL staff was going to come visit with you. How often does that happen? Do people, is your phone blowing up or text messages trying to pick your brain, vice versa, get you to discuss maybe some trends and or even players?
Well, these are guys that I've coached, and they're in the league, and they're doing a great job. And they said, you know, Coach, we want to talk about the RPOs. I want your opinion on it. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to do it on Skype and just look at some things and share thoughts. And actually, I think I'm going to do it with 5 teams this year, and just you know. And it's funny, none of them play each other, if you can believe that. But you know, that's the thing right now. The game, those guys that are used in the pros, it used to be a cookie cutter league where hey, you knew what you're going to face. You know. Dick LeBeau used to come over when I was at Pitt, and I swear to God, this is the truth. If he's listening, he would tell you, we're fixing to play Navy. And he said, Phil, I want to see what they look like on offense. Well, at the time, Navy was number 5 or 6 in the country, had just beat the dickens out of a Wake Forest team. And it's actually the year that Dave Aranda was calling me from Hawaii because they played them after we played them. But anyway, I showed him what they were doing. They were unbalanced bones, double slot T, end over. And he got up. He goes, I wouldn't be able to coach in this league. And this is one of the best coordinators in the history of the NFL.
Absolutely.
He said, this is ridiculous. So, you know, it's just, and NFL slowly but surely is evolving.
Final thing, you brought up the North Carolina Bowl game. Johnny Jefferson ran for 299 yards. And some of the other successes, the UCLA game when you guys just pounded their guts and you just killed them on defense too. Did you guys have so much fun after winning the first Big 12 title that when you went to Arizona, it really, were practices locked in because it seemed like a team that was kind of having fun and distracted, right? Did UCF just come in there and bludgeon you guys?
Well, we 2 things. We wanted to play the better team. We wanted to go to the Peach Bowl and play Ole Miss because Ole Miss, you know, whether you like it or not, I don't think us or UCF did a great job on us, both sides of the ball. But at the same time, I felt, if you remember, it was hectic for all of us because that was when Texas offered Art the job.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were out there, kids are asking, everybody's asking, and it was distracted. But I would never take away anything what they did. They, their quarterback. We did not tackle well defensively. We were basically a mess. And then offensively, we had guys wide open. We couldn't make the throw. And they beat us, and that's all you can say about it.
All right, next Monday, right back with you at 5 o'clock. We'll have a few games. Notre Dame plays Navy and Ireland, but we'll be able to look ahead to some of the games. Can't wait to start looking back at the college weekend.
When does Florida play Utah? That'll be a good game.
That's Labor Day, right before Labor Day. Yeah, that second week. The first weekend in September,
Well, good deal. I'm looking forward to it, guys.
Thank you. We are too. Phil Bennett, former college football coach, coached as a head coach at SMU, was interim at Pitt when Dave Wanstedt moved on, and so he's going to be with us on Mondays. And the ability to look back at games, he watches the games and look back at certain games over the weekend as how they happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to talking about games. I think I said that at the very beginning and just reinforces it talking to him now it's fun to get some insight on how you get ready for the start of the season and some of the other things as well. But when we'll actually be able to say, like, hey, what happened to, TCU's defense here and, actual results and surprises and things like that, I think that's what we're all anxiously awaiting, and he will be great, just like he was 3 or 4 years ago when we had that segment before he went back into coaching. So very much looking forward to having that back and being able to dissect these games with him each week.
From a guy who coached it and coached against it and tried to win with it. When we come back, we continue this 5 o'clock hour. David Hellman at the bottom of the hour from Fox Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue here in Waco. So whatever part of town you're in, now you've got a spot for the best customer service, the speediest, happiest customer service, the knowledge, all of that. Look, over on the original location, they're still specializing in the local craft bourbons, the great craft beer section. Look, it's the summer is winding down on the calendar. Obviously, it feels like it's never going to end outside because it's so hot. But those fall beers are starting to come out, so churn in the roster, as they always do there at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. And then over in the downtown location, they're about what's hip, what's happening, what are the trends on social media, online, what are the cool new drinks that are out there. That's what you specialize in at the downtown location. So whatever you're looking for, Riverbend Liquor and Wine has you covered. Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street behind the bank, or downtown on Franklin, now with 2 locations.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to 365 Sports. It's time for our weekly segment with David Hellman of FoxSports.com.
David Hellman joins us Mondays, and we're closing in last preseason week, and then, of course, the season around the corner. David, thank you for your time. How much does the DeMarvion Overshown injury hurt the Cowboys?
I mean, I definitely think it matters. I think that's the best way I can phrase it. It's hard to know how much because we're not going to get to see the guy have a rookie season, which is, it's a bummer for anybody, but it's especially a bummer for a young rookie who, he looked to be making an impact and it looked like he was going to carve out a role for himself. I actually wrote about this today for Fox Sports. Good chance for a shameless plug. I think the Cowboys are situated to handle it. I look at Overshown. You just look at his size and his skill set. He's basically an oversized safety out there. And fortunately, the Cowboys have guys like that, whether it's Jaron Kearse, whether it's Donovan Wilson, whether it's Marquise Bell, their young safety. And then obviously you have your other linebackers, Leighton Vander Esch, Damone Clark, guys like that. I think they've got the bodies to handle it. I do wonder how this affects depth on the back end. It's boring as far as radio talk goes, but Overshown was probably a guy that was going to need to play a whole lot of special teams because somebody like Leighton Vander Esch isn't going to do that. Guys like Jaron Kearse and Donovan Wilson aren't going to play a ton of special teams. So you lose those snaps. I think they have the bodies to replace the defensive production, but when you think about stuff like that, it makes you wonder if maybe they need to go out and look for another guy on the back end of the depth chart. But more than anything, it just sucks. Like I said, he's been really exciting through these 2 preseason games. I definitely think he was going to find a way to get on the field regularly as a rookie. And, we'll just have to put a pin in that until next summer, which sucks.
Where do you see them looking for help outside of linebacker that may have not come to fruition in camp just yet? And knowing we still have a couple more weeks to go before cutdown day.
Well, I think we'll just skip the kicker conversation because I think everybody gets that. I think everybody understands that the kicker situation won't be settled until we get to game week 1. We'll see how Brandon Aubrey does in one more preseason performance. And then they'll have to decide whether they think that's good enough to avoid looking for a veteran. Other than that, and I think, unfortunately, this is the same thing for, 29 of the 32 teams, but you'd love to have some extra depth on the offensive line. A couple guys got banged up in Seattle. Matt Waletzko is dealing with something right now. And then on top of that, there's just, there just aren't very many above average backup offensive linemen in the NFL. There just aren't that many good offensive linemen to go around. Most teams don't have 5 good starters, let alone 2 or 3 good backups. So I doubt the Cowboys feel wonderful about their depth. Maybe they can claim a guy that they like off of somebody else's cuts, or, every couple of years, we'll see them, swing a minor trade, whether that's using a 6th or 7th round pick to get an extra lineman, or maybe they've got a spare DB because they got so many of them. That's probably where I would look, though, is for some offensive line depth. But like I said, I think most teams in the NFL feel the same way, so that might be easier said than done.
There was a time when the Cowboys at the backside, the safety position was always something that it's almost as if no one thought they cared about it. Are they in the best shape they've been in a while when it comes to their depth at safety, starters to those who will play a lot?
It's not even close. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think organizations tend to follow the lead of their coaches, especially when their coaches prove themselves. And obviously, Dan Quinn has been wonderful for the Cowboys since they brought him on, and he clearly values what those guys can do. So I don't think it's a coincidence that they've invested heavily at the position since he got there and found some guys that showed him what they could do. But yeah, I mean, you've basically got 3 starters, all 3 of whom are making pretty good money by DB standards, by safety standards. And then you've got a couple of young guys in the pipe. I mentioned Marquise Bell. You've got Idris Kwame back there. So yeah, I mean, I think every team in the league sees their depth get tested when starters start going down. But the fact that you've got 3 you feel great about, and then probably another 2 or maybe even 3 that you at least feel intrigued about, I mean, it's leaps and bounds better than what we've seen from the safety position here since Darren Woodson retired.
David, in the rest of the league, Jonathan Taylor has been granted permission by the Colts to seek a trade. What the end of that is remains to be seen. He has been vocal about the plight of the running back. He seems to me to be ready to die on a hill that has claimed the Le'Veon Bells and like of the world. The Colts obviously want a high, the reports are a high compensation pick, whatever, out there for them. What do you think the true value for a running back of his caliber is, and where does it make sense that he would wind up this close to the start of the season?
I think you could probably do an hour on that topic, honestly. It's fascinating. I mean, I think there's so many ways you can take it. I mean, I think we get a little bit carried away with the value of running backs. There's people out there that'll say running backs don't matter at all. I don't agree with that. I mean, obviously you can get in a lot of trouble paying a running back 70, 80, 90 million dollars like the Cowboys did with these idiots. But I mean, Jonathan Taylor should be paid 8 figures a year, whether that's $12, $13 million, whatever. And I would say, I don't know if you can get a first-round pick for a guy with his injury history, but I would certainly try to get it. And if I couldn't, I would at least demand, I don't know, maybe a 2nd and a 3rd-round pick, something like that. The thing that makes it interesting for me is typically when you see a guy that's angling for a new contract get traded, it's almost an understanding that he's going to get paid his big contract by his new team. And so you've got to come up with a team that's got the money to pay Jonathan Taylor $60 million, as well as willing to part with a big time draft pick or 2. And I think when you look down that list, it's just not very long. I think, the Chiefs and the Bills would probably love to have him, especially as close as they feel like they are to winning a Super Bowl, but do they have the money to pull it off? A team like the Dolphins that's done so many trades recently, do they feel like giving up another big pick? Ironically, I mean, in a lot of ways, I think it makes sense for the Cowboys, but I just don't think it's something the Cowboys would do. So I don't think you even need to consider that. But if you look at it on paper, you're like, man, you'd love it if the running back depth in Dallas was a little bit better, and they do have the money. But like I said, I just don't think that organizationally makes sense for them. So yeah, I think that's what makes it tricky is I think if you really think about it, it's hard to come up with more than 2 or 3 teams that would be able to pull this off. And that's why I'll be interested to see where it goes. I mean, I don't have any inside information on the Colts, but if I had to bet, it's just too many moving parts to pull it off before the season starts. But that's what makes this stuff fun is, maybe somebody will come out of nowhere to get the job done.
What will it cost?
I mean, I would think, David, they could, do you think a second-round pick gets it done if you throw in a conditional 4th or 5th with that?
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I imagine. I mean, I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure the Colts want a first. But at the same time, the Colts are probably not willing to give Jonathan Taylor a contract because of how much time he missed with his injury last year. And so you say, wait a minute, this guy's already touched the ball 800 times in his career, and he missed a lot of last season with an injury. I'm not giving up a first-round pick for that. So, yeah, I mean, I think a second, like I said, a second and a third, or maybe a second and a 4th that turns into a 3rd if he hits certain playing parameters. It's really hard to guess at trade packages, but I mean, that sounds like the conversation that would get it done. I think bare minimum is a 2 and something else. But hey, maybe if it gets into a bidding war, maybe the Colts could get a 1 out of it, depending on who they're talking to.
David, thank you very much for your time. David Hellman with us on Mondays in the 5 o'clock hour, usually around 5:30 from Fox Sports covering the NFL and the Cowboys. All right, so Paul sent this story to us. John Wilner in the San Jose Mercury News and also the Wilner Hotline. Pac-12 collapse. Washington State's Kirk Schultz suggested Fox's strategy. I told you guys I didn't feel great. Fox's strategy to block Apple fueled the Big Ten's raid on Washington and Oregon.
Yeah.
And there's also a nugget about Arizona when they had their foot in the door at the Big 12, too.
So Kirk Schultz's conspiracy theory, and he even acknowledges in there, he said, I know people are going to say, Kirk, put on your tinfoil hat, is that Fox, knowing that Apple was putting their foot in the door in college football, decided to get involved and get Oregon and Washington out to the Big Ten so that they could keep Apple out of college football for 5 or 6 more years, which, as conspiracy theories go, actually isn't that far-fetched. It's a pretty good strategic business decision by Fox to try to keep, the largest company in the world out of your business if you can for as long as you can before they make a bigger move, and maybe you have more time to plan and build a counter to it, because Apple is just a behemoth and they could buy everything and everybody right now. And that's, I'm sure, what a lot of people are worried about is how do you compete with it if they just have unlimited money to go at, kind of like the Saudis. Like, how do you stop it from happening once it happens? And the other contention in this article is that Arizona had already applied to the Big 12 on Wednesday before the Friday meeting. And when the Big 10 heard about this, they had no more qualms about being the
conference killer.
The conference killer, which is just such a weird way to split hairs, considering that when it comes specifically to the Pac-12, they're the ones that started it.
But here's the key, Craig and Paul. When did they find that out? If they entered agreed basically on Wednesday. It didn't come down official until Friday night, although we know a lot of work was done overnight on Thursday. So what if they wouldn't have found out? Could that have saved the Pac-12? What if they wouldn't have found out? Would they have jumped in on Friday morning with Oregon and Washington?
I don't know. I feel like, it's been interesting to get some of the details after the fact of just sort of the unpacking and the autopsy being done, although that's not fair because the Pac-12 is still technically alive. But, yeah, I don't really buy into they were going to sign on Friday and then all of a sudden they got a call. I just don't believe that. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't believe that. I don't believe that you make just such a flippant decision all of a sudden in seconds of time or minutes of time when you were intent on doing the other thing right before you got said phone call or you made said phone call. I call BS on that. I know that people have their sources and everything, but I feel like, you might have been waiting for the final sign-off from the Big Ten maybe, but I don't think that anything was getting done without that final sign-off from the Big Ten. So if the Big Ten said, we're open arms and we're good to go, green light, then they're like, boom, good, green light, let's go. I don't know. I don't feel like it was some like everything was great and it was all going to be settled and this just one thing happened and it all came crumbling down. I just think way too many things happened in the buildup, way too many uncertainties for what would happen after the fact. That, yeah, sure, that deal looked good that they were presented and everything like that, but I just don't buy into that they were all going to sign that Friday morning and everything was going to move on. And just all of a sudden, this call came in that ruined everything, or this call went out that ruined everything. I don't believe that.
And I think you're probably right. What I get, and from talking to people that were always, it seemed like, right there in the middle of all this, I'm not saying anybody from the Pac-12, but those who had contacts, is that Friday morning was more of a maybe send a message out through the public, through social media or whatever, to possibly delay things, which is what the Pac-12 went through for 13 months. And so, do they have a deal? No, because they only have 4 teams. And so they're delayed again because who's going to be in the Pac-12? Who's going to be added to the Pac-12? It's just, but I believe Friday was a Hail Mary, a PR-type stunt, and a stunt's maybe not the right word, to maybe cool the Jets because they knew that Arizona was gone and that they knew it was just a matter of time that Washington and Oregon were leaving that day.
I don't know that I agree with that, because if you found out, I think it's interesting, like where we're trying to, point the fingers on how this all actually unfolded. I mean, learning about how it all kind of occurred is cool to hear after the fact, but if you had an idea that Arizona was leaving on Thursday night, then Oregon and Washington were still showing up Friday morning and just ready to sign off. But then, oh my God, that phone call happened right before, and then they suddenly, so they were cool, like no Arizona, just moving on along. And I'm sure somebody would be like, yeah, they were going to add SMU and San Diego. I just don't believe that. I don't believe Oregon and Washington were cool with losing Colorado and Arizona and then just, let's sign a grant of rights and sign this Apple deal. And the Big Ten might be interested, but we'll just leave that on the table for a few. No, I think that everybody did what was best for them to the very last moment. And it just so happened that it went long enough to where the Pac-12 thought that maybe they'd found the solution and everybody got on board. But there was just way too many uncertainties. And ultimately, everybody knew, like, hey, it's time to S or get off the pot, make those final phone calls and throw your final lifelines out. And everybody did. And what they got in return was a ship off the island. And that all led to whatever they thought was going to happen on Friday being completely dissolved by the time it actually got around to it. So, I believe just about anything as far as the sequencing of events go is pretty clear. Arizona, clearly by that, was gone anyways prior to Oregon and Washington. So for the debate on, they only left because this, not according to that story. So, I find it all kind of a mess to roll through, but the biggest mess was just that they got to that point anyways.
Wouldn't you love to have seen the Pac-12 presidents, with all due respect to all of them, have been as aggressive in trying to figure out what they were going to be as a conference before all of them leave. Not USC and UCLA, they've been gone for a year. If they would have been as aggressive with that and getting knowledge of their television deal and really what it was, as they were, it appeared, with a PR campaign every other 3 weeks or every 3 weeks. And even now, they're still trying to, this is why it fell apart. And I'm intrigued by this.
Well, I think you also have to tell your story. You don't just hey, the conference loses members and you just don't talk about it. They're trying to talk through it, I think. And they're also trying to just tell the story of what actually happened. And for some reason, there's a lot of people like, oh, one me. Look over there, me. And it's like, who cares at this point?
That's one of the quotes. Tony Petitti, Big Ten commissioner, when he heard about the Arizona news, tells his presidents, we aren't the ones. They felt like they weren't the ones to fire the kill shot. And so that's how they got involved as quickly as they did.
Then based on him, that it doesn't even matter what Oregon and Washington were doing because the kill shot was Arizona leaving. So again, we can just go in circles on who's to blame for what. The Big Ten absolutely deserves some of the blame. Absolutely they do. I don't know why there's this attempt by, I don't know if it's a fan or if it's even the conference itself, to try and pretend like their hands are clean for some PR reason. I don't know what point there is in that.
You got 4, the Big 12 got 4. Who cares? Again, there's
they got the first 2 that started the other 6. Yeah,
they opened up. They pulled the plug and it leaked, but and it leaked badly. The Pac-12 is to blame for its own demise because they weren't in it as much as and maybe because they had so many precedents that were on the outside of looking into the college football world. as where the Big 12 had their crisis in 2010, 11, whatever that was, and were then constantly, it's like when your town gets wiped out by a hurricane, and the next time a hurricane comes, you're more ready for it because you realize what you did wrong, right? Well, I think the Big 12 learned from the first hurricane and approached the next one with preparedness, as where the Pac-12 never experienced a hurricane and then thought like, oh, well, they'll never hit here. And then found out that like, no, they're indiscriminate and they come for whoever they want to, and just waited. And your PR campaign wasn't them working hard at it. That was them barely working at it, because they would get to the point where people are like, hey, we've been asked a lot of questions about this and it's kind of dragging on. Well, all right, well, send out a statement and that should shut the plebes up a little bit.
Give a quote.
Yeah, I just think it's silly that the Big Ten, based on this article, is acting like nothing would have happened until Arizona decided on Thursday night they were leaving as a precautionary. So if it was precautionary and they weren't officially leaving, they were just looking for the lifeboat, as this article states, then just looking into things was enough to get Oregon and Washington to call up the Big Ten, was enough to get the Big Ten to go, well, they're not official. So based on this, Arizona was just looking into the idea of, just in case by the next morning everything had fallen apart. But based on this, the Big Ten took them just looking into it as, oh, they're out, and now we can add Oregon and Washington. That doesn't add up to me. Come on now.
That is interesting that if Arizona, in fact, on Wednesday knew, they were approved by the Big 12 on Thursday night.
Right.
That board meeting, when they had the University or the Arizona Board of Regents with Crow and Robbins, you just wonder what Robbins was thinking during that entire meeting when Crow was trying to keep everything together. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina's Top 5, and this is 365 Sports. PettyClinicLowT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, and used to be. How can he help you? As you get older, 1 out of every 3 men, 1 of 3 or 4 men, have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Sex drive, sleep habits, energy you're not very good with. You're just kind of sluggish. You don't feel good. You're lethargic. And it could be a lot of things, maybe even your diet, or you're sick, or you don't work out, or whatever. But a lot of it can be your testosterone level within your body. It's part of father time. Some guys have that issue and some don't. So, Dr. Kent Petty, contact them, PettyClinicLowT.com. Email, phone number in the top left-hand corner. Tell them I sent you, and they will then, if you contact them, tell them about testosterone. You heard it with me. But they will set you up to go get your blood work, and you kind of can do that on your own time. You go get your blood work. They, Dr. Petty and staff, get your lab results, and if your testosterone level appears to be too low, maybe really low, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be at PettyClinicLowT.com.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate at TexasBeefHouse.com. Samantha Duvall joins us. She's the marketing director who knows all of the specials and also the events coming up. And thank you very much, as always, for your time. So all of these holidays are over. We've hit the meat of, literally, of the summer. And your thoughts about as you hit the month of August and into football season, Samantha?
Football season's right around the corner, so that means it's perfect time for tailgating. The best time to grab our hamburger patties is right now through the end of July. We still have our sale going on with our regular patties and our jalapeno and cheese patties. They're $12 a package, so that's 4 patties to a package. It's perfect for the time for football. Gather all your family around. That way you can grill it up.
Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu and how they age it as well. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 predictions for 2023. I should probably do this as like chapter 1 because I might.
You might what?
I might have more of these. So this is my first wave.
What?
I might have 30. I might have 30 predictions.
Games?
No,
Conference
these are like
titles?
things that are
Bowl
going to
games?
happen
Okay.
this year.
All right.
These are going to happen. So number 5. The ACC will not be able to keep the focus on the field. They're going to have 2, maybe 3 or 4 really good teams this year in the ACC, but 2 of them apparently want to leave the league, and so constantly it's going to be, oh, look, that's going to follow them around all year, even though nothing can happen until later. But I think it's going to be hard for them to keep the focus on the field unless Clemson, Florida State, and other teams are just really, really good. And even then, and I will give you the Pac-12 last year was a really good league, and even then, the focus on a lot of what was going on was not what was going on the field, which was a really good season and will be probably a really good season for them this year in their last one. The ACC might have this same problem.
Can I say something? Let me
go ahead.
I think the only team in the ACC that might have any kind of they're good. They're really good. I've told you, I think Florida State could play for the title. They're the ones, to me, if there's any distraction. I don't think Clemson's got a distraction, or Miami or North Carolina. Florida State's the one that went out there and got on top of the highest mountain and said this is what they want. To me, it might be, especially if they don't win early, like LSU early, which of course would not be that'd be a tough loss because it's a great game. I think they're the ones that would be distracted.
If they're 0-2 versus Tigers in the first month, yes, it's going to be really bad for them.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with him in that I don't think it's really that big of a deal for anybody so long as you're winning games. I mean, I guess if you're Clemson and all of a sudden you're like 2-4, which is not going to happen, and your season's pretty much lost, then maybe you start to turn your focus towards other things that are more entertaining or more optimistic down the line. But I don't know, man. I think early on everybody's going to be focused on football. And when you've got a couple of teams in particular that are appearing like they're going to be pretty good, I think that's where it'll lie. Now, granted, during a Florida State broadcast, them in particular, will it be brought up perhaps? Sure, but as long as Jordan Travis is doing his thing, then the end of the game, all SportsCenter is going to be talking about is them winning or losing. So there'd have to be some more heat. Like if I'm the ACC, I'm stamping out this Cal rumor, and I'm getting all that lined up before next week and getting that done with. So, you know, if you don't want it to be about that, then stamp out the rumors. If you do want it to be about that, then sure, throw some fire at SMU and Cal and whatever mutant, conference you're trying to put together. But I think at least early on, the focus, especially for the better schools, is going to be on just winning. But if you get sidetracked, then sure, you could start to hear that pop up on occasion.
Yep. Number 4. Oregon State ruined someone's Pac-12 title hopes. And maybe, look, with DJU, I'm not putting it outside the realm of possibility that they play for the thing.
I agree.
I think that Jonathan Smith's got a good thing going. I think that them and Washington State are going to have a huge chip on your shoulder playing against the 8 teams that left when they do. Plus, I just really like Jonathan Smith. I think he's a really good coach. And they had a team that was pretty lethal last year at times, and they didn't have a guy who was the former number 1 overall recruit who's probably just wasn't playing in the right system for him. I think DJU has a great year. I think Oregon State has a great year. And at the very least, there's going to be someone who late in the year thinks we are in the driver's seat and the Beavs take them out.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. They're going to be really good. I'm excited about, A.J. Stewart coming over from that staff for Baylor to see what he does with the running backs this year. I've been really impressed by just watching him out on the field. But, he was a part of what they were able to get done last year, and I think they'll just keep on keeping on. And there's a lot of excitement, and there was before all the Pac-12 stuff, but now especially they're kind of like that team that everybody's going to probably be rooting for to really do exactly this, ruin somebody's Pac-12 hopes. If it's USC, even better. If it's some Oregon, even better. But yeah, they're certainly capable, and that's a good team that hopefully a lot of people watch this year.
Number 3, Texas A&M will be just good enough to cool Jimbo's seat.
I get that.
Because, and I say this only because I know the history of this program all too well. When everyone thinks that it's going to be bad, Jimbo and Bobby Petrino won't get along. This is bound to fail. A&M will be just good enough for people to go, look what's going on. There they are. And then in 2024, people are like, there's A&M. Maybe finally we'll be able to win the SEC West. And then we're back again on the hamster wheel of what they do, when this year they will be, I would think they have to be improved, because as much as you can dog Jimbo Fisher, he's not a 5-7 coach year in, year out. He had a bad year, and we'll see, but they might find their way back onto the 8-4 train again. And then people go, they've improved. Well, then they could be 10-2 in 2024 and contend in 25. I just know too much, but I think they'll be just good enough, because people think they're not going to be good, to where Jimbo's seat will cool.
Yeah, I think they'll win enough games to cool it off. I also think that there's going to be more reason to fire him starting next year if he can't beat Texas on a regular basis, or if he can't beat Oklahoma. So, yeah, I don't think now's the time to really upend and pay this massive buyout and then go get some other coach who's basically just another Jimbo Fisher for all you know, and upend everything when so much is about to change. And so to not get to that point of just moving into another season with him, it would have to be pretty bad, and I just don't see how they're going to be that bad again. I just don't see how it's feasible that they will be a 5-7 football team again with all of the changes they've made and with the luxuries they have at their disposal. So yeah, that would be shocking. It would be hella interesting if they do go 5-7, because man, the conversations that will come from that. But yeah, I think that they'll be good enough, like you said, to just move on into another year in that contract.
And I'll say this: 8-4 in 2024, but 0-1 of those is against Texas at home.
Exactly.
Will feel like 5-7 in College Station.
Yeah, the stakes are only going to get higher moving forward because of that game, and then to a lesser extent Oklahoma. Absolutely.
A&M fans don't want to see a buyout. They'll find there's people who write the checks, but they can't afford any kind of neutral or worse. Not this year.
No, and they're like, afford is emotionally afford, is program building afford. Afford, A&M can afford everything. That's not an issue. Number 2, someone unexpected beats Georgia. And they've got one of their easier schedules, but I do think that and they're going to be a really good team again. But what they're trying to do just doesn't happen. And it hasn't happened since Minnesota in the 30s. The 30s, when football was really, really different than it is now. And the systems were really, really different. And they almost lost to Mizzou last year. That was their dud game. I think that their dud game this year gets them, whoever that is. And I'm not talking about against Tennessee. I just think that, and this is kind of just a wild prediction on someone weird on their schedule is going to catch them on the right week and and put a little pimple on their back. It may not matter when it comes to Georgia, but I just think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, history says it probably will because no one's done what they're trying to do. But, man, it's hard to see it on that schedule. That schedule sucks, man.
Yeah.
They don't play a top 25. Now, granted, they might play a top 25 team by the end of the first month because the top 25 is going to change. But on paper, they don't play a top 25 team but twice, and it's not until like November when Ole Miss and Tennessee roll around.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So, yeah, Kentucky might be better. They might be in the top 25 at some point. Auburn, with Hugh Freeze, I could see. Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I'm not putting money on it because on paper it doesn't look like there's a snowball's chance in hell of happening. But
every time we think there's a team in college football that is unbeatable, they lose.
Yeah,
and the reason I said someone and not like Auburn will, because I don't know.
Right.
But it's just how if you look at everybody who's had a great run, about half of those great runs don't end against the big rival. The Florida run that they're about to have the documentary about ended when Nick Saban's run started. So Nick Saban ended Urban Meyer's run at Florida. But most of them are, the thing is really like, oh, this team lost to Maryland. And then after that, it was kind of like, well, they were swimming upstream after that.
Yeah, and I'm looking for, I totally get where you're coming from. It's just hard to see it because they've been so good. But then again, you are changing quarterbacks. You are losing a lot of NFL talent, and you can replant the seeds all you want to. Like at some point, that does catch, you don't just never skip a beat ever. And so, yeah, maybe they skip a beat on the wrong weekend against Kentucky or something and lose a close game because something wild happens. That's certainly possible, and that would obviously be massive news. By the way, on that Florida documentary, I haven't seen it. I'm waiting your review on it because I've seen some not so great reviews, much like the Johnny doc, where it got blown like way out of proportion and turned out to just be okay when all was said and done. I'm kind of getting those same vibes based on a couple people that have seen it. Like they didn't go all in like you'd expect them to. So kind of disappointing. That's sort of become the case for these Netflix documentaries.
It feels like on this particular one, they maybe made a trade for Urban Meyer, which was we'll
it's
get
not
Urban
nearly
Meyer.
as interesting.
Yeah,
it's not nearly as interesting to get his phony perspective on like the scandalous stuff that was actually. That's the sell. It's not hearing from Urban BS and lies some more. Oh, come on, man. That's garbage.
So, all right.
If that was the case, if that's what they traded off for, yeah.
Number one. This is the one that will get probably most. I'm going to say right now, Michigan wins the whole thing. Best offensive line, defensive line combo in the country. Most returning. They've got some transfers in there. They've got Blake Corum coming back. They've got Donovan Edwards coming back. More importantly, they've got J.J. McCarthy ready to go off to the NFL after this year, who's the best quarterback they've had in a very, very long time with another year under his belt. I don't think the Harbaugh suspension will matter because it's 3 games that they're going to win anyway. Hell, Harbaugh could play quarterback for them in those 3 games instead of being suspended at 58 or 9 years old, however he is, and they would still probably win those games. And I think Michigan wins it all. I don't know. I'm not saying over who, but I think what they've got going on and Jim Harbaugh has this year, plus he'll come out of that suspension with a gigantic chip on his shoulder. He's already kind of crazy anyway. I think Michigan wins the whole thing.
I think you're giving not enough respect to East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green.
Maybe not.
Yeah, that's not missing out on much. But, hey, I mean, sure. I mean, I could see it. Others have predicted it, I'm sure, elsewhere. And they're as good of a choice as anybody not named Georgia, for that matter. So, yeah, I mean, they were just, a couple plays from beating TCU in the semis. As bad as they had, some moments in that game that really could have gotten ugly. I mean, they still fought and scratched, and that turned out to be a highly competitive game that they nearly won anyways. So, yeah, they were close to appearing, and with all they've got coming back, as you pointed out, wouldn't be surprised. Would Harbaugh win the title and then go to the NFL, and we would finally get rid of those rumors for once and for all, or what?
Yeah,
but, I mean, that'd be fascinating to see because it hasn't happened in 23 years. 26 years, right? Since they won the title in 97, Michigan.
One half of it, yeah.
Shared it with Nebraska. So, yeah, that would be interesting. And it would be kind of honestly, just a nice change of pace from what we've seen for a while now with kind of the usual suspects.
Yeah, by the way, retired stockbroker, to you on the chat room, Smokey. Now my wife wants Paul's show-worn shirt, too. It's one of my favorites, though. So if they win, I'll put it up for bid.
This is like the second time I've worn this one. I kind of like the color. of it. Thank you very much, retired stockbroker's wife. Appreciate that. Emery Winter, Jack McKenzie, Levi Caraway, Garrett Ross. We appreciate everybody in the chat room today. I dove in there a couple of different times, and it's like 5 different conversations going on at once. Is pretty darn cool most of the time. The sponsors, Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Don't forget tonight, 10:30, 365 Sports Tonight on the CW. I'm David Smoak. Good night.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support you while lowering the cost of healthcare bills. When you need an MRI, ask your doctor for an Ideal MRI.